And I just want to welcome each and every one of you for joining us this evening to Community Pulse. Community Pulse is a program conceptualized by the youth ministries at Christ is the Answer Family Church, Next Generation Youth. What we want to do is to have conversations dealing with issues that face our young people. And we trust that this will be the genesis of further conversations across various topics with various specialists coming in and sharing their knowledge so that we'll be better able and better equipped to assist our community in their needs. Let me introduce myself. My name is Jean Popelin. I am the youth leader at Christ is the Answer Family Church. And I am very excited about what we have in store for you. I trust you brought your questions, your comments to share, because everybody doesn't know everything, and we are here to learn from each other. So before we get things started, we just want to open with a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing us this afternoon to this platform. We pray your blessings and your protection on those who will be coming on this evening. We thank you for our moderator, we thank you for our panel, and we thank you for our contributors. And we ask that as we sit down and as we discuss violence in schools, that we'll be able to learn from each other and we'll be able to put things into practice which will help stem the tide of deteriorating morals in our society. We pray that we'll be proactive in assisting our young people in dealing with the various challenges that they face. We pray for the parents of children who may be at risk and struggling right now. We ask you that you will cover them. We ask that you will bring people alongside them to assist them in the struggle that they're facing. We pray for the teachers, many of whom are in schools and they're fearful in some cases for the attitude of the children towards them. We pray for your protection and guidance. We pray for the persons who implement policies in dealing with education for our country. We ask you that you will give them wisdom to do the right thing. We also pray for our policemen who have a responsibility to protect and serve. We ask that you will cover them and protect them as they go about their daily duties, that they would not be harmed as they carry out the law's duties. So we thank you for your mercies and your blessings. So let's have a wonderful night. And I ask you that the end will be better equipped to do what we have to do and make a positive difference in the world today. These things we ask in your precious name. Amen. So without any further ado, I will hand over to tonight's moderator, Mrs. Shakita Williams, and she will take you through this evening's proceedings.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Christ is the Answer Family Church. If there are any of you who this is the first time you're engaging with Christ is the Answer Family Church, or you're a visitor, welcome. Welcome to Community Pulse. And this is coming to you from Next Generation Youth. It is always a privilege to be amongst people who are on fire for God, to be amongst people who are radical when it comes to youth development, when it comes to progress within God's kingdom and progress amongst the future of our Christian community. And so it is unfortunate that we have to be discussing a subject such as youth violence. I've been out to the island for most of the time for the last 2-3 months and came back to unfortunate circumstances. This is a hard hit, a hard insight on our reality, and it shows that we have a lot of work to do. We as the people of God, we as God's kingdom, we have a lot of work to do. The enemy is busy, and we as his people, we as God's people needs to be busy as well. And so I thank all of you for coming on tonight, and I pray that you will continue as we go on this session, continue to invite people to log on, to sign in. Those who have concerns, those who have questions or queries, feel free to unmute your mics when that time comes for us to participate, because this is supposed to be an interactive discussion, one where we are here to share and also learn from our panelists. So we have a number of panelists here who are ready and willing and excited to make several presentations to you based on their experiences. We have parents online, we have policemen online, we have professionals within the educational sector online, we have our pastors online who specify in youth development. And so we have a number of experts that I believe have a wealth of knowledge and information to give to you, and also that you can feed in some information to them that they can take back to their various disciplines so that we can continue these discussions as such. I often say to parents, life at school for me was a means of survival. It wasn't simply just going to school to learn, though we would hope that that is what it is. But because of socialization and the way in which society is made up, all walks of people, all types of people, children are attending school from all different backgrounds, all different social issues that they may have, personal issues, psychological issues, things that they're going through. And all of those characters are lumped together within one social setting called an educational institution. And so oftentimes you go to school with the intention of having a good day, you kiss your parents goodbye. But the reality is, as I said before, sometimes you go in there, you're thrown into a jungle, so to speak. And oftentimes you have to fight hard to survive. And I don't mean fight in a literal sense, though that is some of the things that we have challenges with, though that is some of the experiences of a number of our children. As a young Christian growing up in church, we learn right from wrong. Being raised in a household, you know, not to do certain things, what is accepted, what is not accepted, what is the expectation as me as a young Christian, and what is not the expectations. But our reality is sometimes you go to school, people bully you. There are some people who have challenges with their interpersonal relationship skills. They may see you sitting on a bench and somebody comes and walks up to you and slap you. Somebody picks on you. Somebody tells us something about your parents. All kind of things happen to our children at school. And I hope that by the end of this panel discussions that we are more supportive of our children, or our nieces, our nephews, our godchildren, and that we continue to pray and pray hard for them. Because this is a fight between the spirit and the flesh, and we have been trained as Christians in this all the time. It is also a fight for our children to keep them safe. And so I don't want to take over the session. So at this time, I'm going to introduce to you our panelists, and I'm going to read a short bio on each of them. So here this evening, we have with us Mr. Esmond Waldron, who's 32 years old and attends the People's Cathedral Church. He was born and raised in a Christian home and accepted Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior at the age of 4 and got baptized at the age of 8. He attended the People's Cathedral Primary School and then went on to the St. Michael's Secondary School. He pursued his higher education at the Barbados Community College and the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus. From there, he graduated in 2014 with a bachelor's in art. His major was history and psychology. After he graduated from university, God altered his path and reminded him that he called him to set apart and set ablaze for ministry. So after that, he applied for the North Point Bible College, where he graduated with salutatorian of his class in 2019 with dual degrees, a bachelor's in arts and biblical studies and pastoral ministry. He then went on to complete his master's in practical theology with concentration in leadership from the North Point Bible College in 2020. After returning home in December of 2019, Esmond was brought on staff at the People's Cathedral Church in February of that same year. And he has been the assistant pastor there with leadership over youth, sports, and evangelism ministries, along with other pastoral duties. In addition to this, he's also the PAWI Youth Director of Barbados District, and he's held this post since 2020, recently being re-elected in that same position. Prior to him leaving North Point Bible College in 2015, he was the Assistant PAWI Youth Director of Barbados District from 2014 to 2015. And while he held those positions within the youth department at the People's Cathedral, he did so for a number of years. His desire is to see growth and development amongst young people, all ages in Christ. And his heart's desire is to see his generation and those to come to continue to serve the Lord as God's will manifest on this earth. Welcome, Ezra. We also have on our panel, Brother Keith Headley. Brother Headley is a qualified educator with 46 years of experience under his belt, 28 of which was spent in the classroom as a teacher, 2 years as a senior teacher, and 16 years as principal. He holds a bachelor degree in education and sociology from the University of the West Indies. He has a teacher training certificate from the Eardiston College and certificates in educational management from Cave Hill campus, as well as certificates in leadership training from the Cambridge University. Mr. Headley is currently on pre-retirement leave, so he is living his life up from his post of being a principal at the All Saints Primary School, where he had been assigned for the past 16 years. Presently, he is attached to the Eardiston Teacher Training College as a coach for students who are pursuing the diploma in educational leadership. Brother Headley has been a member of the Christ is the Answer Family Church for the past 20 years. He has taught a number of Sunday school classes and is currently a member of the worship team. He's married to his beautiful wife, Lorraine, and has 2 lovely daughters, Kayla and Kian. His favorite Bible verse is, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Philippians 4:13. Welcome, Brother Keith. We have with us also Miss Sanasha Brathwaite, who is a qualified teacher who teaches at the primary school level within the Ministry of Education in Barbados. She is a graduate of the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus, where she majored in chemistry and education. Sanasha briefly worked as a teacher at the secondary school level in the year 2016 and began her current teaching career at the primary level in 2017. She decided to further her education in a diploma in primary education at the Eardiston Teachers Training College, from which she graduated in 2018 with double distinction. She has also recently furthered her studies at BIMAP Institution, where she did certification in general management. Sanasha is also a member of the Christ is the Answer Family Church and has been so for the past 18 years. Her professional goals are advocating for lifelong learning and to be an effective mentor, to learn new teaching techniques and to develop her professional skills. Other goals include, of course, learning new skills, upskilling and retooling herself, and sharing her knowledge with others, particularly young people. As an educator, her mission is to foster an academic atmosphere of excellence in all learning pursuits. And her personal interests are baking, cooking, exploring new places in her home island, Barbados, living a healthy lifestyle, and traveling the world. Welcome, Sanasha. We also have a woman of CARICOM with us this evening, Eunice White, who came to Barbados from the island of St. Lucia as a missionary in 1998. She spent 4 years at Youth with a Mission, also known as YMAM, as a student, youth leader, secretary, worshiper, choir director, cook, choreographer, and the list goes on. Eunice is a jack of all trades. She has traveled to many Caribbean countries on her missionary journey, which includes Trinidad and Tobago, Grenada, St. Vincent, Dominica, Guyana, Suriname, and attended YWAM conferences in Miami. She completed 6 months of lectures in outreach discipleship, in training school, and has 3 months of training in children and youth leadership training school. At YWAM Trinidad, she completed these studies. She still refers to herself as a Barbalutionary, and her YWAMers say the same. Miss White is the proud mother of 3 beautiful teenagers and is currently working as an optical assistant at Anika Optical. She's also a worship leader at the Christ is the Answer Family Church, where she worships. Family, children, and youth are our heartbeat. It is her passion. She purposes in her heart to encourage, build, and give counsel to anyone, regardless of age, who needs it. Her favorite verse is Galatians 2:20. She leaves with us these words: "Indeed, I have been crucified with Christ. My ego is no longer central. It is no longer important that I appear righteous before you or have your good opinion. And I am no longer driven just to impress God. Christ lives in me. The life you see me living is not mine, but it is lived by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me." Welcome to the panel, Eunice. We also have with us this evening, last but not least, Sergeant Raymond Maynard. Raymond Maynard is married and is the father of 2 lovely sons. He completed his secondary school education at the Alling School. In 1989, he completed his 2-year associate's degree in agricultural science and management at the Barbados Community College. He enlisted in the Barbados Royal Police Force as a constable in 1992 and has worked at various departments, including Criminal Investigations Department and Traffic Division. He was transferred to the Northern Division in 1997, where he was stationed at the District E Police Station. In 2001, he became a community officer with responsibility for community policing in the St. Peter's Station District. Sergeant Maynard is a trade DARE officer, a PROCCER drug prevention officer, and an alternative dispute resolution skills trained officer. He enjoys working with young people and has taught over 4,000 young people in the DARE program. He was promoted in November 2014 and now works regular shift duties, supervising younger police officers in their skills and development within the Barbados Royal Police Force. Ladies and gentlemen, here is your panel for this evening's discussion. I am so excited. There's a wealth of knowledge that these people hold. And as I was reading those bios, I realized that I am probably the youngest one sitting here because some of these experiences I realized took place in the year that I was born. And so it gives me much pleasure to be here sitting amongst you, those who've been through it all as young people growing up, those who have experienced it in raising your children, and those who currently still go through it and having to deal with, educate, and train a number of our children and young people, be it in our profession, within our church setting, in our own personal lives, and a number of other areas. So at this time, I would like to open the floor to our panelists. Remember, everyone, each panelist will make a presentation this evening. At the end of those presentations, of course, we will open the floor to any questions, queries, or comments, or any information that you would want to bring before the forum this evening. So we would ask that since this is a Zoom platform that we're using, you can kindly use the function to raise your hand to indicate that you wish to speak, or you can type a message in the chat so that our staff can see who it is that would want to make a comment, and we would have a smooth flow of things this evening. So at this time, I would like to start with Brother Keith Headley to give his presentation. Brother Keith?
Good night to the panel. Good night also to Sister Shakira, who is our chairperson. And let me commend her for her talent in speech, because I would say she's a speechifier. you often, whenever I hear you presenting, ma'am, I'm always impressed with the quality of your presentations. You really could inspire one to want to listen to you. So I'm pleased that one of our young people, who came through the Sunday school at my time, is so well positioned now to be a presenter for our program. My task this evening as an educator is to speak on violence. Now, violence within our school environment is nothing new. From the time I was at school as a boy, in primary schools in my day, 1960s and 70s, it wasn't as bad. But in getting to secondary school, it was a different ball game for me. I heard Shakita refer to the point that when you go to school, you go into a sort of a zone of we have to look for survival. At secondary school, there was a pattern whereby people used to say, we are going to baptize you. And that baptism was not in the form of water. That baptism was in the form of a slap around your head as a new student coming to secondary school. But fortunately for me, Shakita, I had on the panel, let me say good at the panel, I had some older siblings at school, and they were able to protect me from those persons who want to attack me. But let me go with a working definition of violence that I can share with you before we get into the topic of my presentation. Violence, the Webster dictionary says, violence is the use of physical force so as to injure, abuse, damage, or destroy. Other definitions also use by the World Health Organization state that violence as the intentional use of physical force or power threatened or actual against oneself, another person, or against a group or community, which either results in or has a high likelihood of resulting in injury, death, psychological harm, maldevelopment, or deprivation. Now, we may think that violence is only a thing that occurs locally, but is in schools. It happens internationally. Only recently we've heard of shootings and killings in the United States of America, where people go into schools and use guns and whatever to harm others. So it's not only local, it's also internationally, where we have violence in schools, Japan, China, wherever you find it, there's violence occurring in those schools. Internationally, violence resulted in deaths of an estimated 1.28 million people in 2013, up from 1.3 million in 1990. However, global population grew by roughly 1.9 billion during those years, showing a dramatic reduction in violence per capita. Of the deaths in 2013, roughly 842,000 were attributed to self-harm, which is called suicide. So a lot of people commit suicide as well, and that means they harm themselves. Commit suicide. 405,000 to personal violence and 31,000 to collective violence, which is war and legal intervention. For each single death due to violence, there are dozens of what we know hospitalizations and hundreds of emergency department visits where we have our own hospital. We have to take care of those persons who go there who are harmed. Thousands of doctors' appointments where we have the nurses, doctors involved. Furthermore, violence often has lifelong consequences for physical, mental health, and social functioning, and can slow economic and social development. In 2013, of the estimated 4,000 or 5,000 deaths due to interpersonal violence globally, assault by firearm was the cause of 180,000 deaths. And we know in Barbados today, we're looking at schools, but we had a few instances in schools in Barbados, not recently, where one or two people use weapons, knives. We had an incident once where one child was shot actually using a weapon as well. Assault by sharp objects was the cause of 114,000 deaths, that's worldwide, and remaining 110,000 deaths from other causes. Violence in many forms can be preventable. There is a strong relationship between the levels of violence and modifiable factors in countries such as concentrated regional poverty, income, and gender inequality. The harmful use of alcohol and the absence of safe, stable, and nurturing relationships between children and parents. That is also a very challenging one that we have to do. The relationship between the parents and the children, where it's not stable. that creates some problems as well for violence in school and if in the school environment. So also we have to understand that whatever happens in the home environment where the children are nurtured, that will impact how the child relates to others around him or her. Because when violence occurs in the home, the child practices what he or she sees in that home environment. So we have to be very careful how we relate to our children, how we behave in front of them, how we nurture our children in our homes. So it is important that we also look at the look at 9 types of violence. And there are many more than 9, but I just focus on 9 for the time being. Physical violence. Physical violence occurs when someone uses a part of the body or an object to control a person's actions. And we know what those objects may be: knives, guns, whatever, sticks, whatever, rocks, whatever. Psychological violence. This psychological violence occurs when someone uses threats and causes fear in an individual to gain control. So that is psychological when they use various strategies to create fear in one's mind. Then we have here emotional violence. People believe that only violence can be physical, but emotional violence also can be impactful. Emotional violence occurs when someone says or does something to make some person feel stupid or worthless. And we have that happening not only in the homes, but in the classrooms as well. Where people maybe, their teachers or other teachers may say something to you that make you feel, belittle you. Your students, your own peers within the classroom may make you feel as though you're worthless. These can cause people to respond or in a way, or to behave in a way that could be very effective. Cultural violence occurs when an individual is harmed as a result of the practice that are part of his own culture. We may have people who come into our schools who may be coming from a different culture, and people may not be able to be very tolerant of the culture of that person, and they may be taunting that person or whatever the case may be. Then we have spiritual violence. Spiritual violence or religious violence occurs when someone uses individuals' spiritual beliefs to manipulate or dominate or control that person. That is very critical. So we only have ones that are psychological, also spiritual as well. And neglect, this is one that I think we can look at a lot. Neglect is very critical. Neglect occurs when somebody has the responsibility to provide care or assistance for the individual, but does not. And that is one that really is very prevalent in our schools. And because of that neglect, we find that those children feel very traumatized. They feel as though nobody cares about them, and they can react in a very violent manner as well. We have financial abuse. People believe that we have that occurring as well. Financial abuse occurs when someone controls an individual financial resources with the person's consent or misuses those resources. And we know that in some instances in schools, some children are more fortunate than others to bring to school more money than other children. And they can use that person who brings the money, can use that money to manipulate those around them, or they can also be the target of someone who also wants to gain that money from them, and may find ways and means to control that individual. And the one that I'm concerned about, and that is very prevalent and I missed today, is what we call digital abuse. Now, digital abuse, and I guess that this occurs also in our schools, where we have people using the devices, mobile devices, or to send negative or threatening messages, stealing or changing your passwords, texting you constantly and demanding responses using technology or any kind to monitor you. So those are only a few types of violences I want to focus on. I don't want to be too long, but they want to make reference to 2 Bible verses that I think are very critical to what I would do normally in my school environment when I encounter those students who have challenges with violence. We try to use moral suasion. We don't try to use the flogging, because flogging is still allowed in schools today. But when children get involved in fights, when they get involved in doing in physical violence, any form of stones, or whatever, we try to use a lot of moral suasion. We don't try to use violence against violence, but show ways in which the child can develop morally and learn from his or her mistakes. And just want to Bible verse in the refer to Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and the instruction of the Lord. And the second one, just want to focus on the time being, Colossians 3:8. But now you must put them all away: anger, wrath, malice, slander, obscene talk from your mouth. And these are some basic ones that I would further in between in time as I do my duties as a leader, to make a reference to some things that will happen in the environment school that will relate to violence or call violence in the school environment. That's my short presentation to Shakita, and I comment as the time demands. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brother Keith Headley, for providing us not only some insight on the different types of violence, but also giving us a statistical analysis so that we can appreciate how grave an issue it is that we are facing with. I like that you touch upon the issue of neglect towards our children, and hence that may be some of the underlying challenges that they may be facing, hence why some of them may retaliate or express themselves in a particular way. So interesting discussion thus far. We're off to a very good start. I hope that everybody's taking notes and making note of their questions and queries as we get to that part of the evening's discussion. At this time, I would like to invite Sanasha Brathwaite, Sister Sanasha, so that you can take the floor and give your presentation.
Hi, a pleasant good evening to one and all. Tonight, I will be sharing a presentation to you. Give me a minute. So I will also be speaking to you about violence in schools. As I was said earlier, my name is Sanasha Brathwaite, and the first thing I want to start on is what is violence? And Brother Keith would have just given us this definition by the World Health Organization. So I will just leave it there for you to read for a few seconds. But violence is the use of physical force. It can be persons who may threaten someone. It could be a group. Oftentimes we know that there are groups and gangs that are involved in these school violent situations. But oftentimes parents may say, persons may ask actually, when does violence begin? And violence can begin at any age. It has been discovered that children as young as preschoolers can show violent behavior. Sometimes you find that children are throwing tantrums, not because the child throws tantrums means that child will be violent, but that's one of the signs in which if that child is not controlled from early, that he or she may present violent tendencies as time goes on. So violent behavior in a child at any age always needs to be taken seriously. It should not be quickly dismissed as just a phase they're going through. Because oftentimes, persons with little children may trouble other children, and someone will say, that's just a phase he or she's going through. And they may very laugh it off. But it can become a very serious thing if it's not dealt with from early. So what is violence in school? School violence is violence that occurs in the school setting or among students of a given school. It's not a different kind of violence, but it's violence that occurs within the school setting, and that's why it's called school violence. It describes a violent act that disrupts learning and have negative effects on students, schools, and the broader community. And we all know that oftentimes, living right here in Barbados, that you have, sometimes you'll be on the street and you will see these children fighting. There'll be this big brawl occurring on the road. And even recently, I was coming home, I was driving on my way home, and I saw this group of students about to fight. One boy had a large stone in his hand, about to throw it at another child. And all I could do was pray that God would remedy that situation as quickly as possible. And I continued along my way. The police quickly came. I saw the police going to intervene in the situation. And there were several onlookers. And of course, because of that, person seeing children fighting in such a manner, they will then have a negative effect a negative impact on that school. Persons would then say, well, this school is known for X, Y, or Z. So we'd like to encourage you to let your children know that what they demonstrate actually has an effect on them and their school. School is oftentimes the location where the violence occurs. However, it may also occur in the streets as students who are representative of one or more than one school challenge each other away from the school's compound. So what are some of the violent behaviors that may be demonstrated? We may have bullying, and we may also have cyberbullying. Brother Keith would have also touched on that, where he would have spoken about internet, the use of internet, where persons usually use the internet and they create a havoc for children. Sometimes they may do some of the worst things on children, and of course that then plays with their psychological well-being. There's also fighting. Fighting is another form of violent behavior. We have vandalism, fire setting, use of weapons, and these weapons can include something as small as a protractor. It can be a T-square, maybe one of those things they use to carve wood out when you're doing woodwork. I can't remember the name of it right now, but all of those are little items that children carry to school. They carry school knives, they carry school guns. I've worked at school before where a child actually carried to school a gun. Luckily, it was found in time, so the police intervened. But all of these are things that are found within the school. So parents, please check your children's bikes before they leave home. Though granted, sometimes they do get them on their way to school. Some other violent behaviors are physical aggression, cruelty towards animals, explosive temper tantrums, intentional destruction of property, and threats or attempts to hurt others. And that includes thoughts of killing, wanting to kill others. And I don't think it's discussed enough, mental health here in Barbados, but there are several persons around Barbados, not only within the school, that we need to really focus in on the mental health of persons around us. So what are the causes of violence in schools? One of the causes can be sexual abuse. Maybe a child is being sexually abused at home. Maybe it could be within the school. It can be at various places that a child may be sexually abused. And therefore, they may bottle up their emotions. They may not even tell anyone, but they may find them fighting and misbehaving. And really and truly, you don't know what that child is going through. So a listening ear can also help with that child and let them know, once they allow you to know what is happening in their lives. Poor leadership, whether that be at the school or at home, poor leadership oftentimes leads to the cause of violence. We have delinquent peers, the use of alcohol or drugs. Oftentimes children, even from the primary level, they're exposed to the use and abuse of alcohol and maybe even marijuana, various drugs they may be introduced to. And we as teachers see it at school. Children come to school and they're not focused. You can look in their eyes and you can see the child is present in body, but not there in mind. And oftentimes it might be that their parent, whether mother, mommy or daddy, may have been smoking. And they sit there before the child goes to school, because I've had children confess it to me before, where they say, well, my daddy puffed the marijuana into my face this morning. So that child really and truly cannot focus, and it does have an effect on their mental psyche. Then there are other mental health conditions that results in violence in schools, poor academic performance. Children who perform poorly academically, they oftentimes lash out because that's the only way they can think of getting attention. That's the only way they can think of feeling accepted. Or sometimes they just want to be the bullies, so they want to feel like they have some form of power. So because of their lack of academic performance, they try to make up for it in another sense. Then we have dysfunctional family dynamics, witnessing or being a victim of violence. poverty or high crime rates within the community as well. So some of the effective ways to stop violence in school. Show your love. And I mean this in every sense. It is sad oftentimes that you will be speaking with children at school and they will come and they say, teacher, nobody at home loves me. Nobody cares about me. And it truly breaks my heart to know that there's a child living with a family and he or she doesn't feel loved because no one at home shows them any love. They tell them they're stupid, they beat on them. And the children come to school and they're already broken. Parents may look past it, but it's something that I will encourage all parents, all guardians, all family members, please let your children know that you love them. Know their friends. As we often hear, one bad apple can spoil the bunch. Or what's the other thing, they have birds of a feather flock together, and then the company you keep will determine the trouble you meet. So please make sure you know the friends that your child or guardian associates themselves with. Talk to your children, find out what's happening in their lives. Sometimes we may be afraid to speak with children to find out exactly what's happening because some of the things we may think our children are nice little angels, but they may not be as angelic as we think. But nonetheless, be prepared and have that conversation as hard as it might be. I encourage you to talk with your children. Know the warning signs of violence. Get your children involved in extracurricular activities. The more activities they're involved in, the more positive reinforcements they are involved in, the less time they have to get into trouble. So please, if you can, please encourage your children to be involved in extracurricular activities. Don't be afraid to parent and know when to intervene. Sometimes parents just want to be the child's friend. Nothing's wrong with being your child's friend, but please, first and foremost, be that child's parent. Also praise and encourage your children for their good behavior, for their academic work. If your child happens to be failing, say Tommy got 20% in a test today, and then next week he comes and he gets 25%. Praise him for that. Let him know you're proud of him, that he has done better. Encourage him, of course, to do better in future. Keep pushing him along, but don't knock him down because he got 25% and failed nonetheless. He has made an improvement. Another thing we can do is create a safe and supportive school climate. And examples of these are positive interventions and supports and psychological and counseling services. And this is oftentimes found, the ministry usually interacts and provides schools. At secondary schools, I know there are usually counselors that are attached to the schools. At a primary level, there is usually a counselor that may come in at least one day per week, though this is really and truly not enough time to deal with the psychological impacts on the children, because children go through a lot. So though that one day may not be enough, and we are advocating to get more, we are thankful that there's at least some kind of counseling services that are available. Also, link child protection and prevention with the prevention of violence. So I'll end off here by stating my Bible reading, which comes from 1 Corinthians 16, verse 14, which tells you, let all that you do be done in love. Let all that you do be done in love. Thank you. I pass back over to Shakita.
Thank you very, very much, Sister Sinash, for that presentation. And what touched me most is that I realized in our definitions of violence, we are seeing a lot of physical contact, the intention to destroy or the intention to harm physically and so on. But Sanasha, you touched on a very important part of it, and that's the psychological factor of it. And I truly believe that violence can happen towards our mental health, towards children's mental health, their ability to be able to cope with some of the psychological and verbal abuse that they often experience from their peers and sometimes from adults around them too, that may cause them to react the way in which they do or cause them to appear dysfunctional. You also mentioned nipping it in the bud. That is certain signs that we may see in our children that we need to hit home to them first and foremost, because you also said the first set of socialization starts in the home. And so we as parents, guardians, as relatives and family members, when we see those little signs, and first more, we have to find out what signs are, because some of us may not actually know what these little signs are, but the throwing of the tantrums, the snatching of the toys or the snacks from another child, those little things that we can stop from the early and assist our teachers and our police officers and those in society who have the authority to have to deal with these challenges when they explode, assist them by nipping some of them in the bud. So thank you very much for that, Sanasha. I now invite Sister Eunice White, Our Lady of CARICOM, to present to you this evening.
Hi, good night, everyone again. Okay, I'm here representing a parent from CARICOM, yes. Growing up in school, we didn't have that amount of violence in school. Yes, we had some fights, but it wasn't as present how it is here today. But I can stand and say that of recent, I can stand for two parents that did have the child. My nephew is one of them that committed violence, but they were on the side of bullying. And the recent one that they just had with the guy stabbing the other one. And my focus is now would go to the opposite side where fighting back. Okay. So I did a research on a psychologist. She had done some study in some schools. Her name is Karen Haley. And I'm just going to read some of the excerpts of what she wrote about fighting back may stop some children from being bullied. So I'm reading I'm on the other side of the fence where I'm representing the ones that are being bullied, the ones that are actually the victim and not the bully. Okay. Fighting back can risk serious injury, but if a student is placed in real physical danger, it may need to be considered as an option. If your child is being pushed around at school, would you expect them to take the hit and seek support later or fight back? Ask any school administrator whether kids should hit back and you will get a decisive no. Most teachers agree that students should not hit back, and for good reasons. Hitting back may lead to an escalation in violence and can result in serious injuries or fatalities. Schools and teachers have a duty to care or to keep all students safe. They cannot condone hitting back because of the risk of students being hurt. So where does this leave victims? When school programs don't stop the bullying. Although most students agree that initiating violence is not acceptable, many recommend hitting back as a strategy to deter aggression and bullying. It is not uncommon for parents also to recommend hitting back. Even teachers, when parenting their own children, sometimes advises their children to do this. Apart from retaliation, hitting back includes elements of self-defense, which in Western society is generally accepted as legitimate. But proving the act was in self-defense can be challenging. School policies and actions do not necessarily distinguish between initial aggression and hitting back in response to aggression. So students could well receive consequences such as suspension or hitting back, even if acting in self-defense. Why encourage kids to hit back? Research shows that boys are more likely to be both the victims of instigators of aggression. Like students, parents who recommend hitting back often justify it as a deterrent to further aggression. Some would say, I don't want my son known for fighting, but also I don't want him to be known as the kid who gets pushed around. Teachers who would recommend hitting back for their own child also report it might be in their own child's best interest. One said, as a father, I'm concerned only for my son's safety. As a teacher, I have to look out for everyone. Personally, as a parent, I understand that if my children don't hit back, they'll become other children's victims. Does fighting better deter further aggression, as the question asking? There is some evidence to suggest that hitting back may prevent further bullying. Several studies of preschool and primary school aged children have found that being submissive to peers and not retaliating increases children's risk on ongoing bullying. But the story is not that simple. Of children who are bullied, those who hit back are more likely to be bullied 6 months later than children who don't retaliate. We know now that there are two distinct groups of children prone to ongoing bullying. The first group are passive victims. These are those who are submissive, timid, anxious, and do not retaliate against peer pressure or aggression. Children who bully can target those students without fear of retaliation. Then we have the second group, which is proactive. Those children are known as proactive victims who lashed out angrily with unskilled aggression. Proactive victims are at even greater risk of ongoing bullying than passive victims because their actions keep the conflict going. They get caught in an ongoing cycle of revenge. In many ways, passive and proactive victims are at opposite extremes. However, they do have one crucial thing in common: the tendency to overreact. This inability to control strong emotions is the single most important factor for determining ongoing victimization. Another factor also influences whether hitting back will encourage or discourage further aggression. And that is how competently and confidently the child fights back if they go down this path. Aggression in children has previously been distinguished as either ineffectual or effectual. Children who are ineffectual aggressors become emotionally distressed, escalate conflicts into aggression, but end up losing fights. They are likely to keep being targeted for aggression and are, in other words, provocative victims. Children who are effectual aggressors apply force quickly and effectively to get what they want. They are also rarely bullied. Included in effectual aggressor are children who bully and start fights. However, there are also children who do not bully, generally get on well with peers, but respond decisively if ever assaulted. Hitting back may deter further aggression if done calmly and competently. But if the child is highly emotional or physical unskilled, hitting back will make matters much worse. What should kids do if they are being bullied? There are several low-risk strategies likely to work when handling verbal or minor physical disputes. One is staying calm. The other is standing up for yourself with words, not bad words, sorting out misunderstandings, and seeking help from a friend. Our outreach shows that when a child is being bullied, most schools can improve the situation when made aware of the issue. So it's important to inform school of any concerns. There are also many that children and parents can do to prevent physical bullying. Research shows that warm, supportive parenting lowers children's risk of being bullied by peers at school. Having good friends also offers protection against bullying. Parents can help by actively supporting the child's friendship and coaching the child to respond calmly to negative behavior from peers. They can help children practice responding calmly and assertively in minor physical aggressions for the other students. For instance, if pinching is a concern, a parent can show the child how to calmly block pinching while telling the other child calmly and firmly to stop. Most boys like to engage in friendly rough and tumble play, but this type of play tends to deteriorate into aggression with unpopular boys, but not with popular boys. Aggressive boys are likely to misread actions of other boys as aggressive and to escalate into violence. Learning to engage in physical play within appropriate limits and to read physical situations is a useful skill for boys to learn. Contact sports such as rugby league can offer boys practice having physical contact with other boys within clearly defined limits. This helps them build confidence in responding calmly to physical situations. Schools have a duty to care to protect children from harm, but despite the vigilance of teachers, there are still occasions of students being seriously assaulted by other students. Children need to learn how to recognize and keep away from potential dangerous situations. They can also learn skills to diffuse risky situations with calm body language and words. But if a child is unable to avoid physical assault, it is in the child's best interest that they have the skills and confidence to handle the situation calmly and competently. Okay, I will give examples later on as we go on. So this is my presentation.
Thank you so very much for that, Sister Eunice. You said something that I was actually thinking about when I first heard the topic for this evening's discussion. And it is a very real reality that we have to open up our eyes to. And it comes to with the stigma. Sometimes we see two children fighting, or a group of children fighting. And we say to ourselves, but why it is that these children behaving so, why it is that the parents doing, they have no control. But sometimes one of those parties that is involved in a dispute is simply defending themselves or literally trying to survive. And I've had that experience already, how sometimes we attribute a particular stigma to a particular student or a child because of the uniform that they have on, the school that they go to, because this is what we say these schools are, the newer secondary schools, you would find this kind of behavior with them, and the older secondary schools, you're not seeing it. But the question is, when we have situations where our children are trying to survive or defend themselves, what exactly do we advise our children? What it is that we say to them? So I noticed that you informed us about a number of research that some psychologists has done on ways in which our children can defend themselves or what our children can do as mediator factors. But then we have to hit home to our realities. Does some of those advice that are presented to us, does it contradict with what the expectations are within our schools, or does it contradict with what we are supposed to teach our children as Christians and vice versa? So this is a very interesting discussion thus far. I thank you so much for the information that you've provided, because I believe it will spark some conversation as we go on. So I thank you for that. At this time, I would like to invite Pastor Ezron Waldron to present to you. I'm loving the discussions. I'm loving the information provided, the research done. Loving it thus far, and I look forward definitely to hearing what our audience has to say. So, Pastor Waldron.
Good evening. Thanks for having me once again. Yeah, it's been interesting to hear everyone speak so far. And I honestly like how you started the presentation the whole evening, because I remember going to school as well. It was more survival. It wasn't survival how it is now, but you were so afraid, especially if you're in first form. You gotta walk past, third or fourth, fifth formers. You were so cautious because you were like, but they don't want to brush them, they don't want to touch your shoes. Some people's shoes were shiny, touch it, is something happening. So you kind of had to know your territory in a sense. Especially if you're leaving primary school, going to secondary school, especially coming from a private school or Christian school, or because there are different school settings in Barbados, but secondary school is that thing, you're at that initiation period. I'm no longer the popular person at my school, or no longer so you're entering into a new environment. And it's amazing, when John Paul asked me to be part of the panel, I give it some thought, because I know that he was telling me there are people from different sectors of life, education, police, different people, but it's also a spiritual element to it. And that's something that we cannot neglect when it comes to these sort of topics. Everybody's made of, our thing is mind, body, and soul, our spirit. And all three are interconnected. Sometimes people could pick one over the other, but all three make up who we are. And when he spoke to me about it, he gave it some thought. Because I know people will come with different presentations, they've been brilliant. But I know that coming from somebody like me, I had to be something to connect spiritually. And it's amazing when actually had an engagement last night and this topic came up, because somebody was telling me of a case of a 10-year-old and the situation they find themselves in, and how the violence that is a factor of resolve it, the environment, everything, and they cursing adults, doing all kinds of things and getting all kinds of trouble, and it hurt my heart, to be honest with you, because so many people have become statistics in our society, and people are not statistics, they're people, emotions, feelings, different backgrounds, and then when you come to a church setting, people come from different walks of life into a building. Now, the church is not a building, it's made of people. Some people come from 2-parent homes. Some people come from 1-parent home. People come with a home with no parents. They're being raised by aunt or uncle or grandmother. Some people are adopted, some people are orphans, but they come into church because we all need help in church. And the thing about it is, when it comes to violence, I like that some people said the violence is not only physical, but it's emotional. There's online bullying. As a pastor, you hear so many different things. People come for counseling or tell you about situations, and violence in our country is a real thing. Being in youth ministry, you hear some of the stories that young people tell, and somebody asked myself, is this like a movie or like a fictional book? Because some of these young people going through the chapters in their life, and when I look back at their chapter in whether it's secondary school or their teenage years, is not what it was for me or for the moderator. Yes, you had to be so cautious, but we made it through. We made it through unscathed. Yes, there was one or two little rumblings, but we made it through unscathed. Now these young people are scarred. Some of these young people, watch stabbings. And you think about how you go and tell your parent you watch a stabbing at school. You watch when your friends get stabbed. When you watch when your friends get beat by 4 or 5 people come and crowd them, and the emotional turmoil they're going through, they still gotta do it at school because they got dreams and visions. So they still do it at school. They're still expected to do all of these things. Sometimes do 8 and 9 CXCs, and I'm not here to find excuses, but I hear that's the situation that the young people find themselves in now, and start the tackle of trying to leave home. When I leave home in one piece, I gotta get back home with the same piece. I pray that there's no injuries, there's no concerns. You know, I could be walking the road and something happened, or so it makes me realize then how we got in here. And when we look at a spiritual point of view, we've always been seen as a Christian nation. That's all we've seen ourselves. And it made me realize that maybe, and I always say the climate of a nation is dependent on the church. And maybe in a sense, no, we have lost our zeal for God. You know, maybe, prayer ministry is something that was big in church, but it's not there anymore. And could that be as a result, the lack of praying in church or praying going on in church? Not talking about a particular church, but the body of Christ in general. Could that be as a result of increasing violence? And not increasing violence, there's a different things going on in the nation as a result maybe of our being complacent. So when you speak about the violence going on in our nation today, could it be as a result of we not being aggressive in our prayer to God, aggressive in our Christianity? You know, when people come and the different things that young people say, or even the bullying and all kinds of things that is going on, you know, and then we say that our island needs prayer. We are very quick to say that, but then what's happening in our prayer meetings? Are people coming out? So I said there's a spiritual element to it, you know, and we cannot neglect the physical aspect, the emotional aspect, all important, but the spiritual aspect is equally important as well. You know, I'm not only speaking as a youth director, but speaking as a general, as a pastor. You know, like we cannot neglect the spiritual element when it comes to church. Yes, church, we can't see church as in coming on Sundays or being foreign ritual, but we have to probably get back to that place of seeking the face of God never before, because nor our nation is dependent on it, but the future generations is dependent on it. You know, when they look and God is a God of restoration. God can restore any situation, any life. I've seen it happen, and He's still in the business of doing it. But maybe it calls for us to be that. I know that maybe there's some people who are parents, you know, and parents of young people. I will implore you, if your child is living in your house, if you say it's church is Sunday, your child can't be, oh, well, I don't know if it coming today, and say, well, okay, well, you don't come, you don't got to come. Because all those things play a role. You know, like I remember my mom always tell me, as well as in my house, in my rules. So if church is Sunday, I can't be like, oh, mommy, I'm not going to church. And I find that maybe the case of maybe just having that understanding and spiritual education is equally important. The same how going to school, get education, we're doing CSCs, you get bachelor's and master's. So how physical education is important, spiritual education is also important. So we kind of let Sunday school, we kind of let junior church, we kind of let youth group, prayer meeting. And it's not only for children, but adults as well, because children mimic the parents. And if you are coming, or if somebody look at you is coming, they will take initiative of coming as well. Now, there's also a case where you might have a good upbringing. You might say, well, my child had a good upbringing, but still violence. And then again, I heard someone say just now about who they connect with at school. Friends is so important. I've seen as a pastor, sometimes you have a young person that's so good, like, you know, they're passionate about God, but then maybe they connected somewhere with a friend, and their perception has changed, you know, and friends are the family that you have. They are your, I want to say distant cousins, you know, but they play a role in shaping you. We all are here, we can attest that not only our parents had a role to play, or our pastors or whoever, but the friends we have, that they have a role to play as well. You know, so I would encourage parents to speak to children about the friends, get to know who their friends are. No, I'm not saying to go through a phone and try to like break the trust between you and your child, but find ways, you know, say who are your friends. If they want to come over, invite them over. Get to know them, because you will get to know who your friends, who their friends are. Because remember, at home, you might spend 5 hours with your your child. They go to school for 7, 8 hours. So you don't know what's going on then. But if you say, you know what, let me know who your friends are, and you invite them over. Yeah, I know it's still COVID, you know, you gotta be careful, but find a way, and you will get to have a greater understanding of probably what your child is doing or not doing, and then be able to redirect them as well. You know, so I know that there's a lot of question to ask. I know there's probably still another panel, so don't want to take up too much time. But I just wanted to make that thing, because when John Paul spoke to me about it, I was like, there's so much things that you could discuss in this topic, because there's so many different layers. And I know maybe we can't get through all this evening, but I hope that we're able to have some kind of leeway into, you know, having some kind of answer, but also having some kind of impact to go by, you know, to try to change this trajectory our nation is currently on. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Pastor Ezra Waldron, for your words of encouragement and your reminders that we need to pray more and be aggressive in our purpose, and that purpose that God has placed us on this earth to be. I realized one thing in common, and you touched on it very clearly when you said that we as parents ought to take accountability for our children, and a part of taking accountability for our children is back to that first set of socialization, getting to know our children, getting to know the company that our children keep, who these friends are, inviting them, bringing them to our home so that we know the type of company that our children are getting involved with. It is only then that we will be able to mediate wherever necessary if we're seeing that they are heading down the roads of what we would consider bad company. But how do we get to bad company? How do we get to be able to assist our children in deciding which friends are the ones that they should keep and which of those they shouldn't keep? Because in a perfect world, it shouldn't even have to come to that. In a perfect world, if everybody has accountability for their children, we may see some changes in the behaviors of others. But then at the same time, Sanasha said it and Pastor Waldron said it too. Sometimes our children are angels at home, and then when they get to school, based on peer pressure and the interaction with others, they're completely different human beings. And then there are some instances where the children are bad behavior at home in the company of their parents, but yet when they're away from the parents, they're actually very much so well behaved. So does that have anything to do with whether or not they respect their parents or their families and respect those on the outside, and vice versa? So there are a number of questions that I have, and I know that some of our audience have them too. So at this time, with no further ado, I would invite Sergeant Raymond Maynard to come and speak to us this evening and share his experiences also as a police officer. Sergeant Raymond Maynard, good night.
Good night, ma'am. Good night, ma'am. Good night to the panel. Good night to the audience. It's nice being here again. Before I start, I want to say thank you to the Christ is the Answer Family Church for inviting, and moderator is the Barbados Police Service. He dropped the Royal. I think I would have sent you my bio from years ago. It might have still had on the Royal, so it's my mistake. Okay, I did a little tweaking with it, but I don't think I took off it. My son was just listening and he asked me to ask Mr. Waldron a question, Pastor Waldron a question. He wants to know if you're going to still be wearing that t-shirt come January.
You could let him know I still be wearing that t-shirt come January.
Okay, I'll pass on the message. They don't highly that you'll be doing it, but I'll pass on the message.
That's okay. I appreciate your son's sentiments though.
Okay, sir. Okay, we've touched on violence so much tonight. And I'm going to touch on the criminal liability of it. And I hope that I will be able to stick within my time frame. Going forward, I want everyone in the panel and the audience to know that any person, be it male or female, who has attained the age of 11 years in this country of Barbados, is can be criminally liable for their actions. Simply, in layman's terms, any person who has attained the age of 11 years that commits an offense in Barbados can and will be charged if they have committed an offense under the law. So at schools, we tend to have a series of offenses under the offenses of against the persons act, which is chapter 141. And the most simple offense you will find on the statute books is something called assault. And assault is simply if I put my hand to your face and cause you to pull back, or I cause you to make any apprehensive move rather than one that you would not normally make. And that's something called simple assault. If I actually strike you that is also an assault. Now, if I strike you and you suffer some type of injury, and it goes with soft tissue injury, where the skin is not broken, the offense is put in the category of assault occasioning actual body harm. And that's those are the two, assault and assault are the occasional actual body harm are the two most common offenses that we find that we would have to unfortunately put young persons being in school before the court. Then there's simple wounding. That's when there's a breaking in the skin. And that it can be called just a little scratch. If somebody scratches you, and as long as the skin is broken, it's called simple wounding. Then we go to serious body harm. That's where someone is cut and it requires stitches. And they usually with a knife or with a cutlass. And we find children taking school those type of things now. And I've had it already for the term at one of my secondary schools where children would have taken school a serious weapon. Then there's something called endangering life, and someone would have touched, the panel would have touched of somebody taking school a firearm, and the firearm being pulled on someone can fired at that person. It doesn't have to strike them. It's called you are endangering that person's life, because we all know that if someone get shoot, and it's wrong, it goes in the wrong place, more than likely that person will die. And if you don't seek medical attention promptly for a shooting victim, that person might eventually lose their life. So it's called endangering life. And we haven't had it as yet. And this is the more serious one, murder. And we hope that we'll never see that in our schools at all. Okay, so those are the offenses that we have basically under the criminal law that we find ourselves dealing with mostly in schools. Simple assault and assault occasional actual body harm. Now the panel would have touched on violence, and they would have given you some certain definitions. But my take on it, and I'd like to hit on parents, because I've seen it for over 20 years dealing with school children and dealing with their parents. Mr. Helly can attest, we did a lot of intervention at schools. And when, not that we were talking anybody's name, but when the parents left, we were in awe at the type of parents that came to that school and how they were representing their children. Sometimes me and Mr. Helly, we would present all the evidence. And it was so clear that your child would have been doing the wrong thing. And the parents stood up there and defending the child. Sometimes the child would say, "Mommy, I did this," and the parents shut up. So I blame the parents for a lot of the things that are going wrong. And as I said by the panel and going forward, parents want to be the children's friend, and you can see parents want to give children everything. We want to give the latest laptop. We want to give this latest PS4. I went to a small schools recently, and the father and the mother came. And they were not on good speaking terms. And the breakdown, the mother, I can see that the mother was the person who was spoiling this child from early. And the way how the child was speaking to the mother, I stopped the whole meeting. I told the mother, I'm going to tell you something that happens in your household. And when I finished telling her what happens in her house, first time I've ever met her, the father came and shook my hand. He said, that's exactly what happens in my household. Because the little boy was talking down to the mother. I said, Mom, he is the man in your house. He runs things in your house. Because the way how he was talking, she was sitting, even she was standing up, he was talking down to her. And he can see that he was in control. Yes, he was a little bigger than her, but you can see that he was in control of that household. And I promised her that I would help her with him. And I'm selling to the juvenile liaison scheme, which we have. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that a little later, the juvenile liaison scheme. Parents not honest, not being able to give their children sound advice. Peer pressure in schools, one of the things that you have to deal with daily. Children can't choose their friends. Panel also mentioned that. Don't know how to choose a friend. I ask this question when I do my interventions at all my schools. How do you choose a friend? How do you know this boy or this girl can be your friend? Oh, he popular. Oh, he just give me money. Oh, he's friends with this body. I said, that's why you choose him as your friend. What about honesty? Trustworthy? What about those kind of things? I thought it was talking Spanish or French because the children just didn't understand what he was saying. We, as parents, need to make checks on our children. My big son is right next to me, and he can attest to this. when he was going to Ellerslie, I would catch the bus and go and stand up at Eagle Hall and stand behind the tree and watch what he was doing. I didn't do it too regular, but I would go and stand up behind the tree and I would watch his activity on morning. Some one morning he didn't see me, and he was there. He was there at 9:30 with his friends waiting for a special van. And they walked over to him, and when he saw me coming, the bus came, he see me, he went to jump, and I said, "Buddy, don't move. Give me back the money that I give you to go to school this morning." And reluctantly, he put it in my hand. I said, "How you get school? You get school. And how you get lunch? You get lunch. But when you come home, we can talk." I ain't had no more problems being in school after that. Yeah. We need to focus on our children. And I can give you 1,000 stories, man. I can give you 1,000 stories in my panel. And I like to give my audience some of the things that I've experienced. And this is one that I experienced just recently at one of my secondary schools. We had an intervention. We had like 9 or 10 boys in the office. And I said, some curiosity, saw this boy with his phone. Let me see your phone. And he had it over his phone to me. And when I took the phone, I started to go through it. I went in WhatsApp and then I went in a chat. And then I started to blush because the things I saw this little boy posting and receiving in that chat was amazing. Amazing. I've never seen those kind of things on Nook and the site at all. I've never seen those type of things on the site. I spoke to his mother. The next day, she came to the meeting the next day and I said, you know your son has a cell phone? She said, yes. You ever went through it? She said, no. So you don't know nothing at all on that cell phone? She said, no. So those are the type of things that we as parents need to do. Because we are failing our children, and we need to be more policing our children, making sure that we know what they're up to, making sure that they don't get into any bad habits. As Pamela said, know their friends. Know who to choose their friends. We are not supposed to be their friends. We are supposed to know who their friends are. And don't be afraid to tell your children, you can't have him as a friend. We got to put our foot down and speak up as parents and make sure that we police our children. Children don't know how to solve disputes, and I've seen that clearly. The first thing they resort to is violence. And I see it is because that's what they see in society. As my gang got a problem, and there are gangs in schools, by the way, and as my little group got a problem with your group, it is just fighting. And if his principal is one like my principals, how the principals they have, you might not have it in the school. This is the thing that they say, I can meet you in the bus terminal, or I can meet you in Spikestown. That's the thing. That's what they say. And usually they meet in the Spikestown bus terminal. We have police there, but sometimes that doesn't even make a difference. Because they go to the back of the terminal, they go and around the police, and they fight. And that's the only way they know how to solve their problems. And as I said earlier, we have the juvenile liaison scheme, and we have the probation department. We also do interventions at school. I do a lot of interventions at school. And I have to be really forceful with these young persons in order for them to understand what's going on. I have a good track record because most of the things I deal with, they don't come back. Parents come to me and say, well, man, I didn't hear about you. My child got a problem at school. I said, Mom, give me the details. And if it's first or second form, I know I ain't got no problems after that day because those are the younger ones who are less inculcated than the older ones. So I can deal with those forcefully, and I know I won't got a problem with them. The fifth formers and the fourth formers might be a little more challenging because they're inculcated, and then I would have to really force my way because some of them in the gangs already, and then the society where they come from, they know how to get around the system. So we need to really police the children and stop them from getting through the violence they're doing. I want to give you another thing that I find really disturbing, the minibus culture. And if I haven't heard anybody touch on it, the minibus culture in Barbados is really serious. I was standing outside one of my schools the other morning again, minibus full of children come around the corner, and you could hear the music blasting, and the audience could attest that. When we were young and Michael Jackson song came on, we were walking and Michael Jackson song came on, we started the space walk. I had Jelly Curls. I was in love with Michael Jackson. So that's how it was. But these young persons, they know every word to these songs. And these songs are so vulgar. These songs are vulgar. So the children got out in the minibus and you can see the eyes red like if they were smoking. I don't believe they were smoking in the minivan, but their eyes were red and they were like hyper. And they're walking like, and they're hyper. So going into a school setting with that kind of mentality in your head, I just hear all them bad man lyrics. I can't settle to do no schoolwork in that school at all, not till after midday. Everybody got cell phone. So at lunchtime, you can play this kind of music too, and they can get that kind of hype going again. So isn't the school gonna happen for me because the music got my head turned upside down, as we would call it. So the minibus culture is something that we really need to look at seriously. And if it was up to me, they won't be able to catch the minibuses at all. But we try our best in the police service to try to police that. Okay? We try our best in the police service training. And they said already there are gangs in schools, and that's something that we ask the principals to identify, and we are trying to do the various programs to try to help the children. I said I did the DARE program, and I had a lot of success in my programs. I did 5 primary schools, and I started to do the secondary schools until I was promoted, and the DARE program no longer goes on since 2016 at the schools. And I believe that it needs to be enacted at the schools again. And when my principals call and ask about it, I always tell them to elected the commissioner of police, let him know what this program did for your school, and let him know that you need to have this program back in your school. Only this morning, I met one of my students, doing well. And it always fills me up when I see one of my students doing well, who did my program, and they don't progress in their life. Yes, some of them fall through the cracks, but I see more of them doing well. And I believe I've changed so many lives by doing that DARE program. So that's one of the programs that we have, the Juvenile Liaison Scheme, the Summer Camp program we have in the Barbados Police Service. All these are programs we have in order to try to help young persons. I'm going to finish by saying this one thing, okay? Yesterday, I was working my shift duties. There was a young man, I'm going to show you how young people think, and how society works on young people's mind. This young man, he was in my cells for a serious offense. And he asked me to get a phone call to call his mom. He went to use the phone and called mommy, no credit on her phone. Called daddy, no credit on his phone. He got angry. But them knowing in the police custody, they tell them to put money on their phone, and them ain't put no money on their phone. So he got really mad. So he asked me to get up to use a phone call, to use my cell phone. And I was a little naughty. I told him, well, if you were my son, you could use my cell phone, but you're not my son. And he said this to me. I know if it was your son, I wouldn't be in this cell. I would be somewhere, studying at university or doing something else in my life, because they could see what kind of person you is. I know that I wouldn't be in ways. So that told me what kind of environment he grew up, and he realized that the environment and the parenting he had was not the parenting that he was best for him. When he was able to say that, I realized that it could be true or it could be false. But he said that he realized that would be something good for him. Okay, so the young people are not foolish. Young people know the parents, and they want to say this. Young people know these young children know what they can get away with their parents. I've seen it so many. They didn't know how far to push the envelope. They didn't know how to hide the information that they don't want to hide. They know how to camouflage things so the parents can't see. I have a little neighbor here, and this is final story. And she goes to a secondary school. First form at secondary school, she no start in September. Mommy gave her a cell phone because she goes to the school really far out. But she's in first form. She comes home. Mommy is in the house sitting waiting for her. She comes and she stops by the little paling by her neighbor, peeps to make sure mommy outside. And she goes in and she clears her cell phone out there every evening. She makes sure she takes out that cell phone and I know she's doing it something naughty because she's smiling when she's clearing it. I used to look at my fence and I watch her. She's smiling and she's clearing out everything. She deleting everything that she would have done negative through the day. So when she goes in that house, mommy can check. If mommy checks the phone, I believe that mommy will check the phone. She will see nothing. So the children are smart. What mommy should do is ease up the road, but mommy doesn't do that. And parenting is not, back in the day was just, back in the day it was me, mommy, daddy, grandmother, neighbors used to parent these children. But unfortunately, say my neighbor, she moved into the district about 6 months ago, and she hasn't even spoken to me once. I know she knows I'm a police officer, but she hasn't spoken to me even once. I mean, we see her on the road, and she see me outside my fence, taking out my mail. She hasn't spoken to me once. So I believe that she probably has something against, but I would love to tell her what her child is doing and how she should try to meet her on the road up at the bus stop before she get to clear that phone and see what she's doing so we can save another young person. But I can tell you a million things, but I don't want to think the show, so I pass it on to somebody else. Thank you for your time, Mr. Audience.
Thank you so much, Sergeant Maynard. I could listen to you all evening as well. I am, first of all, grateful that you were not my father, because I would have been so ashamed of you there peeping about behind me at the bus stop to see what naughty things I doing. And then I had no money for lunch and I got to figure out, I hope in them times though, bus fare was free. But sometimes it just shows how real you have to be with our children, and sometimes they need a reality check and some tough love. I can say that now that I am an adult, I am grateful for some of the tough loves and reality checks that I've gotten, not only from my parents, but from those around me, and definitely from those who assisted in my upbringing at my church. You mentioned the day program. Unfortunately, it is no longer, but I am a product of the day program. When I was at the All Saints Primary School as a student, I was a part of the day program. And I do believe, I agree with you, that it should be re-implemented in schools, and definitely we need to have those discussions with the powers that be about doing so, particularly now where we are realizing how much the significant increase in violence in schools, and also in violence amongst our children at home in their own communities, because it's not always happening on the premises of the school or when they're in school uniform, but also in their own neighborhoods and neighborhoods against other neighborhoods and gangs and so on. You mentioned sorry?
What year you did the day program?
I was so ashamed if you didn't ask me that.
You're one of my students?
Officer Pinder was my
okay, that's before me. Okay, sure.
Yes.
my sharp colleague. Okay.
Yes, yeah, sharp colleague. Yeah, you mentioned accountability, and a number of the panelists mentioned that we as parents ought to be accountable for our children. We have to teach our children skills such as dispute resolution, how to deal with bullying, how to deal with some of those attacks psychologically and physically that we may face in schools, but also the influence of music you touched on particularly, and the minibus culture, as we call it here in Barbados, and how that can change or alter the behavior of our children. So I want to say thank you to all our panelists who've spoken thus far in the presentations that you've made. I want to open the floor to our audience so that they can have a chance to ask you any questions or make any suggestions or pointers. But I will start with you first. I have a question for you, Sergeant Maynard. What tips would you give parents to help them be more aware of what their children are doing on social media? I'll repeat the question. What tips would you give to parents to help them be more aware of what their children, or become more aware of what their children are doing on social media?
No, first of all, I would advise them to do what I did. One of my sons has a iPhone, and the one has a normal Samsung. The one with the iPhone, he's the one who goes to school. And I had to learn how to use that phone. So, because I wanted to get in to see what he was doing. So parents, seemingly to them, too busy to go in to see what their children, what type of phone they have. They buy the phones for the children, but they don't know nothing about it. No child in my house can have a password on a phone. So if you are a child in my house, do not put a password on that phone. So we go to meetings at schools, and I ask the parent to take the phone and to go on the phone. I test them, and the parents all like that for me. I say that's the first mistake you're making. He is only 12, 13, or 14 years. He should not be having a password or that's like keeping secrets from your parents. That's one thing. Okay? You got to know the phone. You got to do spot checks on that phone. You got to know the kind of chat groups he's in. So if he's in a chat group, I might not want to be in it, but I will be able to go into that phone and see what is posted on that chat group. Messages, there's a part where messages will be backed up in the WhatsApp and the different chat groups. Parents should make sure that the messages are backed up. So your child might delete something, you can always go back and see what he deleted from that phone. to walking. And don't be afraid to take away a phone from a child. I've had parents who children don't have phone because they take away because some infractions. Don't be afraid to take a phone from a child. I say some of us love the children so much. Yes, the children are going to school, far out St. Lucie, whatever, and it's 2 or 3 buses to get where they're going, but they will get home. And if you have to take away that phone from that child to save it from itself, you would need to do that. So those are the type of things that I did as a parent. And yeah, and I advise those things to some of the parents out there when they go to meetings at schools and stuff like that.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. I have a question for Brother Keith and Sanasha, both of you. What if, as a parent, you have been showing love and caring for your child, yet they still go out and do as they please at school? What do I, as a parent, do then? I can repeat the question. What if
Yes,
you're
ma'am.
showing love, showing all the care for that child, and yet that child will still leave home as the angels as they are and go out to school and do as they please? What do I do then as a parent?
There are situations where children who are sent to school by their parents, and these children are given all the necessary things that we need to survive in school. They have all the books, they have all the whatever is necessary they have. But children can be deceptive. They can pretend in front of the parents what the people want to see. But they come to school and they get involved in some activities that are very, 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 very nefarious. And when you call a parent in and you discuss what this child has been going through and what this child has been doing, the involvement, the type of company that a child is keeping, the parents are shocked and they're very, very hurt to see that the child has disappointed him or her. So what we normally do, we will have some counseling for these children, counseling for the parents as well, whereby the parent now is more aware of what he or she should do to get this child more engaged in activities that are fulfilling, than to be engaged in activities that will cause shame. Sometimes we have to call in the social workers because the child may get some sort of company or some sort of activity with a group that can cause real harm to that child's character and development. So therefore, we have to call some other agency, the school psychologist or whatever, or as Sergeant Miller said, we have to call in the police because there may be activities that the child get involved in that is surprising to the parent. So there are very many ways to deal with it. 1, counseling. 2, you can have mentorship, and 3, you can have the intervention of the social workers or the police to help that child regard. But the parents need to make sure that they keep a very, very good check on their child on a daily basis. Don't take things for granted with their children. That's my advice. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Headley. Sanasha, you want to jump in here to add?
Well, the only thing I will add is that oftentimes parents, yes, they get all the love that they know how to give. However, sometimes there's something more that a child needs. Maybe there's some form of love. So communication is the key to such issues, I will say. So if you have a child that you recognize, this child, I'm giving this child everything. I'm giving him money, food, because it's not always that. It's always about financial things. And unfortunately, we as parents, sometimes I find parents oftentimes think, once I've given my child everything financial, everything that this child asks for, I give them, I tell them I love them and do all these things, that they will be the excellent child I want them to be. But despite getting all of those things, all those financial, those little physical things, what do they really need inside? So even last week, I was having a conversation with students from my class. And my question to them was, do you have conversations with your parents? And they told me yes. So I asked what kind of conversations they have. And the conversation that they would have given me is, go in the bedroom and do your homework. Or hold that toy, I brought this home for you today. It's always hold something and go. But is it really a conversation you have with your child? So please, I will encourage parents have conversations, not just give, but have conversations when it was happening. There's something that child is lacking. And with a conversation, you'll be surprised how much you can learn from your child. So that's my piece that I will give for now.
Thank you so much for that, Sanasha and Brother Headley. Pastor Waldron, you raised your hand. You wanted to make an intervention?
Yeah, yes, please. And it was in relation to what Samina was saying.
Okay, go ahead.
I feel like we have advanced so much in technology. Phones are always changing.
Mhm.
You know, I know your child could always come and say, "Mom, I want to lay his phone. I want this, and I want that," and that kind of thing. But you made it clear. I will also back him up. Get to know what the phone is about. Before you buy it, research it. You may not be the most tech savvy person, but when the time comes, you gotta go through your child's phone. You will know what you're doing. There's some different hiding apps. You can have a conversation, you can have things, and you can hide it in a vault. All
Yeah.
these things that you might go looking. So I ain't see anything because children smart, young people smart. We could discuss something in an app or something that you don't even know where it is. You not see it at the home screen. So you just say, okay, well, you got to go, but and you doing the right thing, you going through the phone. But we do not know what the phone is about. If you don't know how to operate it. Yes, my child wants to go and buy it. Then you're already doing the full research. You know, so I would encourage you to before you buy something for your child, get to know what it's about. Whether it's an iPad, whether it's a tablet, whether it's a phone, because then when the time comes, you gotta go through it. Because if the child knows that you gotta ask them about certain things, they will know, well, you can do this little thing real quick, put in my password, set this up, and you get your phone and you don't got no idea what is going on. So I just wanted to endorse what he was saying, because all those things are very important. And make sure that you get to know what the phone is about before you buy it, because the child can't afford it. The child can't go afford no $1,400 on the phone and that kind of thing. So they got come to you for it. Or even to save it up in an account that you gotta have some kind of say over. So before you make those kind of purchases, get to know what the tool. I say you will not be the most tech savvy. You will not know every single thing, but have an idea of what it is. So when time comes, you can say, let me go through this, let me see. And be aware of the hidden apps. They know, go and do some research. Be aware of those things that are going on now. You know, so that you have an idea and be able to be more aware and maybe even save your child's life and later down the road. So that's what I want to say.
Yeah, so it comes back to accountability and parental control is what I'm getting from the panel thus far. But there's a question here to the panel. In your experiences as teachers, you too, Pastor Waldron, and I know that Sergeant Maynard mentioned how effective the DARE program has been over the years. Do you see any positive impacts with schools having Christian organizations such as the ISCF movement into school, Christian Fellowship movement operating in school? Do you believe that have any impact on our school environment? Any of you can answer.
Let me come in here, Sister Williams, Sister Curran, sorry. The ISCF at my school was very active. And I know COVID would have put a damper on what was going on. We had a very active ISCF program where we had close to, probably in some cases, 60, 70 children coming into the program once a week. And we had teachers who are involved in the program who would carry the program. Unfortunately, those students who wanted to be involved in the ISCF, the ones who were more challenging, did not attend the ISCF sessions. So it meant then that we had to find ways and means to reach up to those students who were at risk or who would be a challenge for us when it comes to discipline and behavior. So what we had to do, what we do, we would choose for our worship on mornings, because we still have morning worship at the All Saints School. We would choose themes which would cater to the needs of our students: moral, social, spiritual, and so forth. And we would use those sessions to make sure that we reach out to the total school population, those who are Christian, because we have other religions in the school. and we would ensure that those children are at least getting some sort of spiritual intervention in their lives. What I can say is that the majority of our staff, they're Christian, and they will reinforce what we would choose as a theme. You know, what the theme is, they'll find a Bible story, they'll find some sort of morals reference, whereby they can reinforce what we want to instill in the lives of these children. And that made a difference in these children's behavior. What is also critical, my friend, is that when you see children at risk, because the children who are most challenging in the school environment are the ones who didn't get the right training in the home environment. Their parents are misguided in the way how they relate to children. I had a child who came to school, and he was a new student. He came in class 2 or class 3. And one day, this child came to me, sir, this fellow telling me that he is going to beat me up because he passed and he brushed him. I said, well, why are you behaving like that? He said to me, my father told me, if anybody touched me or told me, bust the heads. I said, bust the head. I said, listen, skipper, you are new to this school. You just came here. I thought bust the head. Suppose we had children, other parents giving the other trying the same advice. You have a lot of bust heads around the school. So that environment whereby some parents do not relate the right message to these children. So we have to use moral suasion to get the child to understand that 2 wrongs don't make it right. And that we should be able to get involved in the school environment whereby students will brush you. Something will happen, but you don't have to retaliate by being violent. So those are the things that happen. But I will say to you that the programs you have at the school can impact the life of the school, but the children who you need to reach most often do not get involved in these programs. And we have to find other ways and means to reach these students. And I can say to you at my school, we have the children who are at risk. We would create classes for those children to be catered to, because as some of my friends said earlier, love and attention. Most children who give trouble or who create problems in school are the ones who seek attention, are the ones who are neglected, are the ones who feel like nobody wants to appreciate them who they are. So we have to find programs to help those students to understand that we care. And care, showing that you care as a leader, showing you care as a teacher, and impact the life of that student. So the more you can set programs in place to get these students to show that you care and you love them, the more you can get the best behavior of these children. And that's my take on it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Brother Kelly. We have a question for Sergeant Maynard. The sister is asking, since you mentioned that from age 11 and older, an individual can be charged under the laws of Barbados, how do you move from assault being escalated from the domestic level, that is being dealt with at the level of the school, being escalated to the police for some kind of mediation? Because fighting technically leads to an assault. So the person is asking, what brings the distinction? How do you move from the fight or the violent act being moved from the domestic level, being dealt with at the school, and being escalated for police mediation?
That differentiation usually comes with the principal and the teacher and the parent. If it's something simple, we always advise the parent to go to the school and try to speak to the principal and work it out. And even if they need my intervention, I always volunteer my time to go and sit in on that matter so that we can have a peaceful solution rather than placing a young man or a woman, young child before the court. Because we as the Barbados Police Service, we don't like to charge young persons. We always try to seek that peaceful resolution. And I think you would have heard my commissioner speak to that a couple of months ago. Even in the open forum in public, how we should try to seek a peaceful resolution rather than trying to criminalize some young person. But then there are instances where it has gone past just going to the school and talking. I have a case right now on my desk, and this week, I don't think that there is a case where I can have a peaceful resolution to that, because there's no way a child can get these type of injuries, and you have these pictures to show the parents. How would you feel if this was done to your child? how would you feel if this was done to your child? And I know you can get the response I want because some children suffer some injuries that there's no talking about it. It has to go to the court. And my thing, and Mr. Hedy would tell you, I always say this, I only talk once. If I deal with a matter today, 4th, 5th formers, 3rd formers at any school, or even the primary school, and they come and I deal with the matter, this is me, Mr. Maynard. I spend time when I deal with my matters. I don't come and say, well, don't do it, and left in 5 minutes. I sit down and I find the root of that problem. I pick it down, as I tell my young constables, when you go to a report, pick it down, and then put it back up. And make sure when you put it back up, you put it back up not with glue, you put it back up with 10 penny nails so it can't come back down. So that's what I do. I usually go and I get the root of the problem, and when I finish, it don't usually be any problems. So that is what I do. So if I go and I do that once, and for some reason, somebody else comes and starts a fight, or the children decide they're going to continue with it, but the police have spoken. So the next step would be the magistrate's court. Because the police can't tell you what to do, then the magistrate probably will. And I tell the students all this. I have a good rapport with the magistrate at Wharton Court. We went to Alice School together, Alice non-Sibi. And not that we doing nothing illegal, but I would write a footnote on the charge sheet. What I've done, the interventions I've done, and this person needs to spend a little time somewhere away from home, or this person needs some kind of counseling, this person needs some kind of intervention. But we have done our part already in that ground level, and it needs to go forward. So the parent, it goes down to the parents. Something the parents, no reasoning with the parents. No reasoning with the parents. I want he charge. And we would have to put that person before court. Okay, that and it doesn't because I said the age of criminal liability starts at 11. That doesn't mean if you have a 9-year-old who is doing criminal, Mr. Hedy can. I'm sorry, picking you, Mr. Hedy, but we did a lot of good work together at all saints. and he can tell you if he identify a young person who is doing some really negative things in the early age. And usually, we had this scenario where we had the parenting was really awful. And we tried to help that young man in that early age. We had no other choice but to take him from his parents because we realized that the parenting wasn't up to scratch. So although he was not charged, we had to put him in an institution where we could help him to become a productive member of society. Because down the road, he was 9 years going down 10. And I could have seen at 15 years, we would have had another Alfred Harding on our hand. So we had to work fast to deal with that young man. So it doesn't mean because you've not reached the level we can't deal with it. Because we will deal with it, and sometimes we will have to deal with it really harshly. Okay?
Yeah, to nip that in the bud. But on the discussion of Law Sergeant Maynard, we also have another question, which I think is quite interesting, where the person is asking if the legalization of marijuana would have an impact on the level of violence that we are seeing in schools and amongst our young people.
And I think that's one of the things I had on my footnote to speak about the drug problem in schools. And it is a problem. It is a problem. And I have seen it already this term where I had some fights at one of my secondary schools, and the root cause for me was marijuana use. And I thank that parent today because she was honest. She was the only parent that was in that forum who was willing to say, I think my son using drugs. I think, man, she told me what she saying she was seeing. And then we sent all them to Eddie Nichols, and we got some drug testing done. We found that there were 9 boys. 7 of them were using drugs. I mean, I'm speaking about 13 and 14-year-old boys. 3rd form, some repeated, some going to 4th form. So these drugs was the issue because these boys were not thinking rationally. I mean, how could you go into a school and they start a fight because somebody passed and brush you, pass foot, and you just want to think because you were so hyped up with the drugs. And I never, ever, ever in my 20 years dealt with a young man or a young lady, and I asked them if you use drugs, and they said no. Say yes. They always say no. I've never seen one say, sir, I just smoke. They always say no. But then I know the telltale signs what to look for. And this is a word I'm using in police force. I have to bluff them. And my bluffing is a little technique that we will use. And I get what we want out of them. Okay, but drugs is definitely a problem in schools. It is prevalent, and because young persons come from society, and I have young persons that's at primary school who openly see their mother and their father selling marijuana in the house. Marijuana sells from the house. Sir, my father, I did my DA program. My daddy did sell that. When I put the leaf on the monitor, yeah, my daddy did sell that. You understand? So it happens in the school, and you will notice one of the children who give me problems at my school. Okay, so it is a problem, and going forward it will cause a problem. Marijuana is not legal. The person who asked the question, marijuana is still illegal in Barbados. Okay, it is still illegal.
Yeah, so they're asking if when the country decides to legalize it, if that would still have an impact on the level of violence.
I don't think it'll be around when that happens, but that's a hard question to answer because the experts say one way if it's legalized, then everybody will be selling, everybody will be using, and then it won't be so in demand, and then the gun violence will not happen. And then some people say if it is legalized, then on the other hand, one body will go and sell it. And so there's a lot of things. I can't speak to that to say if it's legalized, if it would still cause a problem. But I know that marijuana I can tell you all the dangers of marijuana. I can tell you as long as we use it or anybody use it, it can be a problem for them later in life. Going forward, the younger you start using marijuana, the more impact it's going to have on you going forward. And I know you as a dear student would remember that.
Yeah.
The younger you start, the worse it's going to be going forward. Okay? But I can't speak to that impact.
And there are a number of discussions and debates around the legalization of drugs and so on. We know, as you mentioned before, that it can alter the behavior of some. And there are some people that they don't even need something to alter the behavior. There's some people that just are not rational beings. And so they may be going through a particular situation, or they might not even be having a bad day. But the fact that there's an audience and people are around them, and you do something to them by accident or by incident, and they want to retaliate to draw attention to themselves. So we experience a lot of what we call silly behavior and reactions and things that can be avoided because people are simply just doing it for the kicks of it. We have a question here for the entire panel. Anybody can jump in, of course, and answer this one. And the person is asking, can you speak to how divorce impacts children's behaviors in schools? Or does divorce even have an impact on children's behavior in schools negatively or otherwise? Anybody can answer.
I can answer it.
Oh, hi, Sister Eunice.
Hi, let me come on. Okay, I'm gonna answer this one and the next one after that because it's
Okay.
kind of in the same. Well, I'm divorced and my kids, it's all to do with the upbringing of your children. Because my kids, I've never seen them fight. Yeah, one time last week I asked Natalia, I've never seen you fight. And she said, yeah, mom, we fought. And I was like, why? When? And it's like a hit there and a hit there, but I've never seen them physically fight. So I think it's the upbringing of your children and how you taught them before. Because I was one that we never any hitting. No, it was a no for us. You can we taught them how to communicate. If something happened, come and tell mommy, come and tell daddy. But don't hit one another. So I never entertain it, right? So I guess maybe that's what I know. And then I can go further as to things question talking about the impact of girls and boys. What different in our upbringing. I don't think girls are really so much aggressive. I think they have that mothering nurture about them that they want to discipline or because I can say it's about me too. Because I grew up with 4 brothers. And I think if my brothers have to talk about me, they will say, oh, she's the bossy one, or she's the one that did that, she's our mother. But it's just, that's how I felt that I supposed to be, especially my last brother. I felt that when he did something, I wanted to lash him, but he wanted to fight with me, and we always were in a fight. but it wasn't for us to get fired, but it's more of like a nurture. And I see that with Natalia, where if anything is happening with the boys, or she don't like something, she would say, stop this, or and maybe try to lash them, right? But it's not like in any violent way to fight and things. So I think for divorce, I think it's how you bring it can have an impact on certain children, because they don't know how to cope, and it depends on the relationship they have with their parents and what was put in the ear, what was put instilled into in their head about another parent, so that can affect them. So it depends on that also. Yeah.
And thank you so much for that, Sister Eunice. I think definitely to particularly those who are raised in households with siblings, or even who live in extended family arrangements where you have cousins and so on. And you kind of get in that socialization, you get to experience other characteristics, other personalities, peers amongst your age and so on, that you can kind of get a feel about how your child would deal with particular situations, how they would react to them in school with other personalities and children from other parents and so on. So I think that was good in your circumstance. But I really realized that in everything that the panel has been saying thus far, it keeps coming back, the responsibility on parenting. Everything is coming back to parenting and the accountability of parents and what it is that parents need to do. But Sergeant Maynard mentioned the impact on our cultural music, the influence of music on our children's behavior. It shifted it a little bit to say that our children may react a certain way based on the things that they are exposed to in the environment. So we have a question here from our audience saying, well, we know that it is known that there are issues related to the minibus culture and the music that these buses play. So why can't it be outlawed? Or why can't music, the equivalent of music, be outlawed on public transportation is the question. So why do we still allow these minibuses to play the type of music that they're playing on these buses that are transporting our children is the question. Sergeant Maynard, you want to take that one? And then any other panelists can jump in on their own perspective on it.
Yes, ma'am. There was an instance where all minibuses were ordered to take the sets out of the van. That was a couple of years ago. Some persons, one of the persons or the group of persons involved took the government to court, saying that the sets in the van are used to play the news, what was on, and then one of the arguments was if there was a storm coming or some emergency coming to Barbados, then it would usually be put over the airwaves, and that's the only way they would be able to hear if there was some kind of emergency coming. So that was placed before the appeal courts when the law was passed. So there were a host of traffic charges in court where a person was charged for having the sets in the van and for playing loud music. So that put a stop to all of the persons who were being reported for having the sets in the vans. Hence persons can then put back in their sets and continue to have the sets in the van. But then we know that some of those sets don't even play music at all. Don't even play AM or FM. They just play the music. So it is an offense. People are still reported for playing music, but as you can appreciate, police are not around every corner. So we will only report them when we hear them. So the fellas usually when and person in the chat who usually travel on buses, they know that the vulgar music is played, and as soon as a cyclist or police is spotted, the music is turned off. Me, I travel by minibuses, and I'm not telling you to do what I do, but if I get in a van and that type of music is playing, I get on by. I even went as far as to plug a portable speaker, because I ain't paying my money and to go out and listen to that kind of music, right? So if suddenly if I stop a minibus, a fellow don't want to stop because he know what it gives him. He want to play music and he ain't. But if I'm on the road, I will report them. And all the policemen that are on duty, as long as minibuses play that type of music, they will be reported and they will be put up before the court. and they will be fined for the offenses. But we can't prevent them from having these sex because that matter is still before the appeals court. Okay.
Oh. Mhm. Yeah, and I trust me, understand as a young child, and I guess because of my personality, sometimes when I say things or speak out about things, some people laugh. But I remember as a child being on a minibus and I was going to town. And the mistake I made is that I sat in the back seat. So I was sitting on some speakers. And when the music started to play, I could not even tell you what was being played because there was the vibrations and the whole bus vibrated. And I said, driver, this in car going here, you driving, and this music here vibrating my heart. Next thing you know, my heart bursts. And the people in the van start laughing. I don't know it's how I said it or what I said. But the driver said, sweetheart, your heart singing burst. He said, no, on the speaker. And I moved and went to another seat. But the thing is that the man didn't even lower the music. And there were older people on the van. Because generally I would see our senior folk catch the transport board bus service. But there were older people in the van and they were just enjoying this music. They didn't care about the vibrations. They didn't care about what it is was playing or anything. So I think it goes back to our culture, what we've accepted. So like you said, I did not know that that was something that was outlawed before. This is the first time that I'm hearing this. And I think it may be the first time for many others, including the person that asked the question. So I think it is what we tolerate and what we accept as norms is part of the issue too that we are faced with. So Nasha, I see that you have your hand up. You wanted to make an intervention here?
Well, it's not pertaining to the ghetto culture, the van culture.
The ghetto culture, I like that.
That's what it's like. But nonetheless, I was actually raising my hand to speak as it relates to some of the games that parents buy for children. Some of those video games. They too allow children to become very violent. They play these games and then they act it out when they come to school. So that's another thing. Parents, every game that comes down, was the latest one now, the Xbox? But whichever game it is, but regardless of how expensive it is, a parent going to buy all these different games for their children. And it has lots of killing inside these games. And then the children, they come to school and they're inside the class and they're using their books or their pencils and they're pointing at other children and saying, I'm going to shoot you. And they're trying to attack these children. Sometimes I've had a child actually got up from his seat and just randomly ran to this boy with his pencil to stab him. And I asked him what he's doing. He's like, he's just playing. That this is what he does in his game. I told him, this is real life. This is not a game. So parents, I also implore that you stop from encouraging your children, stop from buying those kind of games, murderous games, because that's all they teach them, to be murderers. So please stop from encouraging them with such games. That's the only point I wanted to add in there. Thank you.
So we're saying that our society is influencing our children, and also our children's reality can be altered by what we are feeding them with. And that is, be it the games, be it the music, be it access to certain things that they shouldn't have access to, and so on. I see Pastor Waldron has his hand up. You wanted to speak here at this point?
Yes, please, as well.
Yes.
It's so ironic that she just mentioned that, because in school this morning, when the classes, we were speaking about, the lady that was conducting session speak about even the cartoons that are coming out now. You know, and
yes,
you know, is the games, but the cartoon is not what it was when we were growing up. You know, like you know, like when I was growing up, I think my mom could have been a little more at ease with some of the cartoons and what. No, you know, there was always one or two ones you gotta be careful of, but the majority of the cartoons were like, hey, let me try to watch cartoons. But nowadays you gotta be so careful. Like different subliminal messages that are in it. Not only violence, but you know, gender and you know, lifestyle and all these things that are in it now. And you have to be so mindful of what you are doing. You know, we live in a society, you know, people are so busy. I know it's some is no fault, because you know we're busy and you have to provide for your family. And somebody gotta make sacrifices. But you know, some things to keep a child from annoying you. They go watch TV or look, go iPad, go watch iPad. Not sit down studying, okay, I'm telling my child to go and do this. you know, and it's not only like, it's not only in terms of like age, but it's just in general, you know. So you gotta be very careful what we allow our children to watch, because it is detrimental, and we gotta be more mindful. And speaking as a youth pastor as well too, some young people tell me things, and I guess us, if us be aware, some we don't have, some we don't, some things they go talking about. These are prevalent games, prevalent people, prevalent artists, you know, movies, and gotta be careful. We approaching now October, October now, this Halloween. All these horrors coming out, all these things. And it's not only the movies, but it's cartoons, it's all these things. So we gotta be more mindful of these things, and hopefully that will come.
Yeah, we definitely need to be aware and to look at what our children are watching, what they're involved in, and don't take for granted. I remember Buzz Bunny and Scooby-Doo used to say one thing. It used to have the nice like jokes and the Tom and Jerry and so on. And yes, they had violence in it, but it wasn't in your face like how it is now. Now there are no more subliminal messages. They are very, very, very brazen and in your face. And I find that children often tend to identify with some of these characters and then try to reenact them. So we need to be very, very careful. Sister Eunice, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, I said I was gonna share a testimony about my nephew.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
where he was the actual person who did the stabbing, and it's more so to do with I'm not sure if it was bullying. It wasn't really bullying, but it was a case of his friends jeering at him. And I think my nephew, and I want to say that sometimes things are happening in life with those children, like a trauma. My nephew lost his mom when he was very young, and it's only after when he did that we get to find out that he had that thing against my sister leaving him. Now I think he was about maybe 8 or so when my sister died, and he felt that my sister left him, and he had that anger. He don't want to see any of her pictures, nothing, but he never really made mention of it. So he started going on the block with friends. And my nephew he's soon gonna be 19. But at a young age, he was involved with a lot of things where he left school and different things, but he didn't have that anger issue that we knew about. He loved the Lord. He was a very quiet and helpful boy until he went to live with his dad. And that's when he started into drugs and friends. But that particular day when he went and say hello to his little fellas by the shop, he went and give some of them like high five each of them, and they were just playing with him and laughing at him. And something snapped, and he went back inside and just stabbed up his friend. He just stabbed up his friend one stab, and then the guy ended up in hospital. And he thank God that he was on the prayer list for not. He prayed that the guy did not die or anything like that. But my nephew couldn't believe after the fact it happened. He couldn't believe that he did it. He couldn't see himself doing it. He never thought he could have. He's capable of doing it, and we had to tell him, okay, you need to go and report to jail, to the police. He did went in, and let me tell you, the policeman said the man cried from the time he went there till the next morning. He was crying. They said, "You're not no bad boy. You're very." He was crying that they had to let him go. But with prayer and things like that, he was billed, and the boy didn't spend much time in jail. Sorry, didn't spend much time in hospital. He was out, and right now the court case was very, very quick. It was an agreement, and we just had to pay the boys some money. So I thank God that God intervened and we was just encourage him, but he needed counseling because that was one of the things that kind of cleared him good, because he did that sort of counseling to deal with the trauma of losing his mom at such a young age, and didn't know how to deal with it, and all the different things that happened in his life. And then the same thing happened when my girlfriend told me about her son stabbing another guy, just recently. And I just had used that to encourage her. She was on the prayer list too. And right now he got bail and he's home, and God is gonna do some good things for our children. So we just have to keep them in prayer, because there is people that bully and the children don't know how to handle it.
Praise to God that that young man who was the victim of the incident is doing well physically. You see, the thing is that coming from a background of psychology, oftentimes we hear researchers talking about there are always underlying problems from a psychological perspective that people go through that will cause them to project in whatever form they do. So in his instance, there may have been challenges, as you mentioned, with the passing of his mother. And there had to be other obvious challenges that he had been experiencing, aside from that, as well as a young person, that would lead to a circumstance like that. But might I share with you this evening that generally, teenagers, and researchers often say 3 out of 5 teenagers have suicidal thoughts in their adolescent stages. It could be them in terms of their own self-esteem and their own self-evaluations, having not yet have self-actualization. It could be issues with bullying at school, things that they are observing within the household, not feeling loved, not feeling wanted, or seeking love from a classmate, the whole puppy love with boyfriend, girlfriend, treatment from a elderly person, somebody who's superior to them. It might be a challenge that they're experiencing, even within their social sphere, or the same teasing and taunting. There are a number of different reasons. But generally, the researchers often say that 3 out of 5 children within their adolescent stage have suicidal thoughts. And then you have a portion of them actually trying, a percentage of that 3 of 5 actually trying to commit suicide. And these are just some of the challenges that we have to face and to realize that these are the realities of our young people. So you have that already being a scientific projection on the life of young people. You have that, and then you have the realities that they may face. Then you have the expectations of their parents. And I'll share with you, I had a friend who had a bully at school, and one day, I guess the feather broke the camel's back, and he hit the child. And the child went home and told his family not that he was bullying this child, but rather that the child hit him. And the parent sharpened, the father in particularly sharpened a pencil, very sharp, gave it to the child and said, when you go to school, stab him in his chest, because I ain't sending you to school for nobody to hit you. And that the child did the following day. And when the principal got involved and they started questioning the child and so on, because they knew the child was a bully, the child was a non-bully in the school, they realized the instruction that the parent gave, and they called in the parent. The parent said, yes, I gave him the instruction. I told him to stab him because I ain't sending to school my child for nobody to hit them. And it's quite interesting how sometimes our children might be the ones doing the act, but we automatically assume, as opposed to doing our investigations and asking questions, we automatically assume that our child or our ward is victim. And it goes back to what a lot of you have been saying. In fact, all of the panel said this evening, all of the panelists said, you have to know your children, you have to have conversations with them, talk to them, see what it is that they're doing, what their interests are, what they're engaged in, what they watch, the music that they listen to. We have to be accountable for our children and the actions of our children. And I remember a few years ago, there was a discussion as to whether or not parents should be the one to be charged when their minors commit crimes or commit offenses and so on. I remember that being a hot topic, a heated debate amongst the island and the Caribbean, because it goes back to, there are some instances where we try our best with our children And when they leave home, they're completely different people because of the influences that they are around and the things that they may be getting involved with or the friends that they hang around. So these discussions are I think they're good discussions for us as a church, for us as people who are living these realities. I had my own experiences in school as well, oftentimes bullied. I remembered one of my teachers, my science teacher, at the farm level meeting said, I need to speak to your mother. I need to speak to your mother. And my mother and I, we went to the meeting and I shake it in my books because I try to figure out what it is I do now. If it is the fact that I didn't do my work, because that was the norm for true. I really didn't do a lot of work in secondary school at that time. Couldn't get it do. And I tell myself now I can get in trouble now because I behind and I not catching up. But the teacher said to my mother that he was so disappointed in me because I allowed myself to be bullied by what he called a mosquito. It was a very slim girl. She was very tiny and frail. And she took her umbrella and hit me all over my foot and my back with this umbrella. What happened is that she was walking with the umbrella and I keep saying to her, well, you're poking me with the umbrella, please stop. And she continued. And I tapped her on her shoulder and I said, please stop hitting me with the umbrella. Walk with the umbrella at your side. And she took the umbrella and she gave me some good licks with this umbrella. And I'm going to be honest with you, I ran as fast as I could behind that girl because I was ashamed. This, what the teacher called a mosquito, this small little tiny girl hit me with the umbrella and ran. And the rest laughing at me. And I ran behind her and I couldn't find her. And the teacher then at the time that saw what was happening took me and a friend of mine who was running behind her with me too, took me to the principal's office. I still didn't understand how I'm the one that was taken to the principal's office, I guess because I was the one that was able to catch. And the principal sent out some students and a teacher to look for this child. And they found the child lying down underneath the pavilion on the pasture hiding. And they called her in and they spoke to her and they asked us to shake hands and so on. And at that same farm level meeting, the parent of that child was at the meeting and the teacher expressed in front of myself and my mother his concern. And the parent was disappointed in her child. And she said, well, you know, you shouldn't go around hitting people's children. If it is that you were hitting the girl with the umbrella, you should have said sorry. And that was the end of the conversation. And from that day, I'm going to be honest with you, I made up in my mind, well, if the teacher upset with me for not defending myself, then it means from here on, if anybody interferes with me at school, I ain't taking it. And I went with that mentality. And when people bullied me in any way, if it is that they tell me something, I will brush it off. But the moment that they put their hands on me, I fought back. Because for me, one, I couldn't take it anymore. And two, teacher said, man, it's all right, in essence. And then it's only later on that you already became a prefect and so on that I realized, you know, sometimes that's not always the way to go. There are some instances, unfortunately, where our children fight back, physically defending themselves, and they end up not being here to speak about it today. And so it goes back to what I believe it was Sergeant Maynard that said, we have to teach our children dispute resolution. Sometimes that is not always the end all and the answer to it all, but at least it is a start. Things like IFCF, one of the audience asked if Inter-School Christian Fellowship is something that would make a difference. We need to encourage our children to participate in those things. Sinasha mentioned that we need to encourage our children to participate in extracurricular activities to take their minds away from certain things and keep them away from the tablets and the cell phone and these different things. No longer we see children really outside playing anymore, interacting with one another and communicating, because these are all skills and tools that are necessary for interpersonal relationships and being able to discuss things with people and being able to have differences and understand that everybody's personality is different and you wouldn't agree on everything and you can still go and we're not having to be aggressive towards one another. And so I say that to lead into a question that was posed to the panel, particularly Pastor Waldron. And that question is, as a youth leader from a Christian perspective, what do you think that we can do together as a community to help the youth of our nation stand from the problems of violence?
Well, that is a very, very good question. Whoever asked that question, kudos to you. I think that it has to start with church at large. I feel like youth group is a reflection of the church, individual church. So I know sometimes it's easy to say as a youth leader, oh, youth group. And youth group is extremely important. Now, first of all, I would tell people, any parent, encourage or send your child to youth group. I find that many times they have a choice. When you talk to some young people and they're like, okay, well, I come youth group this Friday, but not next one. I know it's there, and the consistency is missing because the same way how I said before, how we consistently go to school every day. Having that consistency is equally important. And remember, at youth group, our church is, we don't have you for 5 days for 6-7 hours. It's only a 2-hour slot. So we already are disadvantaged in a sense with that regard. And then it's not that we can say how we can have you group 2 or 3 days a week because there's still lessons, there's still school, there's still homework. So we competing with the attention of young people, really. You know, so I would say number one, as policy, as if any senior pastor, any person who's leading an assembly or have some say, make sure that youth group is something that is important to you. Youth group can be like a side hustle church. I know it's the right word, but it doesn't work. You know, it can't be like a church. No, it has to be an integral part. You know, I remember I was in Bible school going North Point. I have friends who graduate. I graduated with pastoral ministry, biblical study, pastoral ministry. I have friends that graduated with youth ministry. They went to school for youth ministry. So it's a concentrated aspect of church. There's pastoral ministry, there's youth ministry, there's worship, there's mission. So it goes to show how important youth ministry really is. So it can only be a case of, you know what, we can just send these people to this little building, that's the church, and do the youth group, keep them entertained. Youth ministry can't be an entertainment center anymore. It has to be something that is a native. Say we're gonna teach the word of God, because the word of God is a fun book. The Bible is an amazing book with different stories, different narratives, like things that we see in movies. That's happening in Bible real life. You know, so I tell people the Bible is a real book and it's a fun, but it's not, so it has to be boring, right? So, but it has to come from these senior pastors saying, no, we're gonna value ministry. It's something important. When you sees that, you've gonna put more energy or more emphasis into youth group because they feel that they're being backed by their spare pastor. You know, and then as a result of the youth group, the youth leader feel encouraged, he will encourage you young people even more. So it's a trickle-down effect. It doesn't make sense. You know, so it has to be that case. My next thing I would say is pray for your leaders, especially youth leaders. It's not easy. It's not easy. You know, many youth leaders are there by vocational means, so they come, that's their giving up their time. I know sometimes being in the position I am in term power, we listen to some youth leaders, they're discouraged at times because, you know, they say they prepare a session, you know, they did all the necessary work, you know, and then they come and see 2 people. But the church got 25 young people, you know, but only 2 people coming up. And then 1 week they got 3, next week they got 10, then back to 1. So it can be discouraging. So pray for them as well, from that point of view, because I feel that is an integral part as well. But then also to when there are youth events, it's important that the old generation comes out as well to support it. Because young people feel it. Being in my position as well too, young people say as well, no, we got youth month or we got youth this at our church, but sometimes we look and see that the don't see older generation. You know, so I say, you know what, I will encourage them to do that job, but also to, I tell young people, when they have other events that the old generation has, you gotta come out as well. They gotta be give and take. You know, but I feel that unity is needed. But also too, there's nothing that prayer can't do. You know, I know that something that prayer is something that is so, you know, it is up there. But when you teach young people about the encountering God, you know, I said they too can encounter God as well. I have those experiences. I have those times with God. I said God can speak to you where you are at. It doesn't matter the situation. I've seen some young people that people thought will not make it. You know, and it's around tremendously, and there's nobody that can have done that but God.
God didn't listen to anybody else. So you know that God had to intervene. And also that we are dealing with a time there's nothing wrong with counseling and therapy. I feel like everything is not, and I know this church said, but everything is not what do you call it, deliverance. Deliverance is important. Don't get me wrong, I'm not telling people don't go through that, but everything is not deliverance sometimes. Sometimes you just sitting down and talking to young people. Probably going through some counseling, going through some therapy, going through whatever the case may be. You see that Mr. Maynard, I'm sure in his program, he sat down with young people and talked to them. Yes, it was something, but talk to them and then to see how he said that he saw somebody a couple years ago that it was his program and to still we must have an impact on that person if the person showed him in the first place. I
Mhm.
that wasn't only you going through the hard thing, but just sitting down talking to young people because they're going through a lot. And some I tell some young people both at my youth group, yeah, TPC name of power, and they say, look, I got something that you guys going through 10 years ago, you have to go through. 5 years ago, you have to go through. So I would say that it starts with the church at top, coming down, trickling down, that relationship with the pastor and the youth group and that kind of thing. Also, implore your parents to send the children to your group. Don't let it be an option. School is not an option, Barbados. You can wake up Tuesday and say, Mommy, I ain't going to school. That's not the problem. You can start home. That don't happen, but if it happens, Barbados, I don't know. That's a very rare case. So the same how that is, and say, you know what? You same how you go to school, how you staying to lessons, how you paying for lessons to you, all these things. Because I find that many days we've gone to the point where children have become so busy. Monday is tennis, Tuesday is badminton, Wednesday is lessons, Thursday is, and it's in itself. And when if Friday have a day off there, they can say, I don't want to do anything. But as you've grew, so all those things have to be done, I would say. But then I would say there's just encountering God, and that might sound so cliche, but I've seen people take that phrase even in 2022, experience from my youth group, and amazing, and it's not anything that I've done as a leader. We stipulate, we have an environment we create it, but when they say, no, what I want to encounter God in my way, some of them encounter God through sports, through the work or through at school. And when they tell you these things, they tell yourself, but it shows how God could hit you wherever you're at. So I would say those things are there. And that's just a small thing of it. Because again, this question could lead to another whole 2-hour discussion. Because that's in-depth the question is. But hopefully I'm able to answer a little bit in that regard.
Yes, thank you so much for that, Pastor Walter. In fact, one parent while you were speaking signaled to me that they believe that we ought to spend a lot more time developing the minds of our children and teaching them how to handle and deal with the issues that life will throw at them. And that includes the encounters, yes, that they're having with their peers and the encounters that they would have with adults.
Yeah.
The reality is that sometimes we as adults, and definitely not the teachers on the panel, but there are some who project self-fulfilling prophecies on children's lives to say, well, you ain't gonna do nothing. You ain't gonna come out of this and that. If the child talkative in school, they would make a comment on things like that. Use the radio now, so well, you can't shut up and stop talking in my class.
Yes.
There's some parents that say things like, you're not different from your father. You're getting up just like your uncle and you're this. So we have to be very careful of the things that we are also feeding in the minds of our children and of our young people, because when we plant those self-fulfilling prophecies in their lives, then what do we expect to come from a dented flower?
You see, no, you said it's so true. I actually have a case. The guy he doesn't want to be like his father so much. To become his father. And even though that might sound so and I mean he's trying extremely hard. He was saying like this, my dad did 1, 2, 3, 4. But the same 1, 2, 3, 4, he's funding himself and is unconsciously, because I was telling him, see, you were raised in that environment, and you go back to that environment every day. So I understand you're trying to not be like that, but in a sense, because you're still in that environment, it's going to be very difficult. So, I say sometimes, you said parent accountability, because sometimes, even as a Christian parent, you might say that you're or just a parent in general, you're trying to do the best environment. You think it's the best environment, but your best environment in your mind and in your child's mind is two different things.
Mhm.
And if you don't sit down and talk to your child and say, listen, all right, tell me what you're going through. And then you will see, you know what, but the environment is not bad, but maybe it can alter to make this a little better for him or her. It doesn't mean changing your morals and values. It just means changing your perception.
Mhm.
And that can go a long way. And one more thing I want to say is pray for your children. I was actually talking to a lady this week. Her child is now 18. And she said, as long as when the child was 4 and 5, even 10 and 11, I would go in my child's bedroom to pray when they're sleeping, get a little prayer oil, and put on my child's head and pray. And they said the child wake. I said, wait, what's this thing on my head? And mother said, I know. But she used to go and do it. And because she understands the importance of prayer, and he said, as you know what, as my child has gone older, I got to start right doing it. I just can't, because 18 and 19, you get an adult and then you want, but says I got to do it because that prayer has kept my child all these years. We were talking and then gave her encouragement saying, I got to start his back. Because like you can't they let that person, as one, even though she's 20 now, 18, then when inside the room, she's sleeping. It can't put as much oil because she feel a little more. But this little thing, but those little things go a long way. So I would even encourage children, parents to pray for their children. If we go going to bed at night, or pray, put all the doorposts or something, even not the phone.
Yeah.
Got the screen, put it back your phone, get all and not the phone. I do things that there's nothing that prayer, there's nothing the power of prayer cannot do. So that's my encouragement.
Thank you so much, Pastor Waldron. There's a question here for you, Sergeant Maynard. And after you answer this question, I would have you pose your question to the audience. So this question here, a member of the audience is saying that we spoke to marijuana being a contributing factor to violence, but what about gambling within the primary school setting and its impacts on our children? Sergeant Maynard?
Yes, ma'am. I'm coming in.
Yes. So they want to know how does gambling impact.
They specify primary schools?
Yes, they specified primary school level.
I honestly haven't been having any challenges with young persons in the primary schools gambling. My challenges come with young persons in the secondary schools. And as long as they get to that first form level, they are introduced to the gambling at schools. And as I said, it starts from very early, and the level of what are you looking for? The level of participation goes up as they go on. So the amount of money that they would induce in this gambling game goes up as they go up through the ranks in first, second, and third form. And you find a lot of young persons being on fear living in first form. And that's the reason why there's a lot of bullying, as somebody in the panel said. A lot of money is taken away from young persons. You find a lot of young people coming to school now selling items at school, Kool-Aids, different snacks. And these things are being sold to make money just for them to go about to gamble. So it is a problem at the secondary schools, and I always try to implore my principals to keep an eye out for it. And they are doing a wonderful job at present. I'm not having any challenge with it since the school has restarted. I'm not saying it isn't a problem because these young men come to school very early. These are young men that don't even go to classes sometimes during the day, but they are at school sometimes at 7:30 in the mornings, setting up shop to gamble, 3 cards, near ceiling, well, various games you can call. But at primary school level, I haven't really been having a challenge with it as yet.
Okay. Thank you so much for that, Sergeant Maynard. But I also want you to pose the question that you put in the chat to our audience, and anyone could answer from in the audience or any panelists.
Okay, my question to the general audience, and I'm not here to try to make anybody shame. This is a question I pose to all my parents at my interventions. Okay, why do you send to school your children? Why do you take that time to send your child to school, be it primary or secondary school? And I just want someone to come and tell me why, or if 2 persons come tell me why they send to school their children.
So members of the audience, the floor is open to you. Anybody could answer, or any panelist, any audience member.
Good night to all.
Good night.
Okay, this is Earlene. I don't have children, but we have a gathering where we come together at family meetings, and that one question is always posed as long as we know that families grow and you get children, grandchildren, great grandchildren. So that is one of the questions that are always posed. Why do you go to school? Why do we send you to school? And if they don't know what to say, or even if they say the correct thing, it is enforced that you are there to receive an education. And that's the that's the fundamental aspect of why you go to school, to receive an education. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Sister Erlene. Anybody else wishes to answer the question posed by Sergeant Maynard? Why do we send our children to school? Anyone from the panel wishes to answer the question as well, based on their perspective too?
Chiquita, I will just jump in here. I believe that the children go to school because between the age of 18 and 67, which is the pensionable age in Barbados, that's your productive work life. So we send the children to school not just to have the cognitive skills, but to learn how to work with each other, how to work in teams, how to complete a project, how to contribute to society, how to be a good man or woman in society, and to take those skills that you have learned, even from first form, even from primary school, or go back even from primary school, how you have learned those, as I said, not just cognitive skills, goes back to building blocks. How do you, all of that is important. So the child is sent to school to learn, yes, the cognitive skills, but how to work with each other, because throughout life then up to the pensionable age in Barbados, you have to work with each other to accomplish projects.
Thank you so much.
Very, very good. Perfect answer. But one word I will add before skills. Skills is the word I'm going to use, but life skills. That's what I tell my students, my parents. You go to school to gain life skills. It's not only about math, English, Spanish, French that you're going to school to learn. Very important, you said, they learn to live with one another. And I always tell them, if you can't live with this person in your classroom and you always picking and making noise, how you can go in the bank and sit down, say that same person and do the job? How would you be able to go somewhere and work for persons when you can't even get along with a classmate or somebody who's at your school? So you go to school to learn life skills. It starts from the area when you're grooming up in the morning. You have to wear a uniform. You have to make sure you have a proper haircut. Your grooming, it starts from the grooming. You got to be punctual. And we know that what happened at St. James School the other morning, or Frederick Smith, as you want to call it, right? Where the principal told the children, we ain't getting into that at all, but I agree with that principle. Because I know we got children that just don't want to go to assembly. And I warn you the first time, assembly starts at 8:45. And if I be closing my gate at 9:15. And if you decide that you're gonna stand on the bottom of the gate, that's that school and not come school, that's a matter for you. But my gate will be closed. So we know that we are teaching children all about this, being punctual, come to school tidy, going to school with the right tools for the job. We are teaching children life skills, how to deal with problems at school, how to write properly, how to read properly, how to articulate themselves. We're not only sending them to do math, and we parents sometimes focus so much on those things, sending to school, just giving them lessons and packing ahead, math, English, Spanish, French. But when a child comes home, you ask the child, how was your day? What you did at school? What problems you encountered? Discuss those things with your child. And you will find that you can get a different child going forward. Don't only ask you pass math? How much percent you get? Whenever you get a report. Yes, I have children who come to the station with me every end of term, and they bring their report for me to see it. The first place I look is down there where Mr. Helly was writing. Mr. Helly, that part at the bottom where you write, behavior, how that person got on at school, if they were tidy, if they gave trouble, that's the first place I look. Before I look up top of the marks or the percentage, I look down to see how those children behave during the term. So we as parents need to do a little more this than just focusing on the maths and the English, those type of things. And we need to focus also on that aspect of helping grow more children going forward. Between the ages of 18 and 67, you sure is 67 for pension, my friend? I'm hearing different.
Yes, well, at this point in time, the pensionable age in Barbados is 67 years. We know that based on the discussions that will come back, it may change. And Shakira, sorry, just to add
that's
as
fine.
well, just to add as well, as an HR practitioner, one of the things, and I will just touch on the area of punctuality. When we see persons who are constantly late for work, constantly, and this is just one area, if we had to check back even to primary school, I believe it will go back to primary school. And that's why the area of responsibility is so important. I always say to people, the authority is important. Yes, it says who is in charge, but you see that responsibility and that accountability, that's very, very important for me. And if we had to trace back as far as primary school, we would see that these are kids who were always late for school, kids who are always given trouble in school. And I have total respect for the teachers online, Tanasha and Mr. Headley. And obviously for the education system, you do a fantastic job, but parents as well. And I know it was said tonight, the accountability and the responsibility that you hold as a parent, even what Pastor Dorcas was saying this morning about the same accountability and responsibility that we have as parents for our child parents, that's on us. And let's make sure that by the time they reach us, in terms of Shakita and myself and the other persons who hold that position of responsibility to help to nurture our people as they come into the workforce, that we can improve on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sister Michelle, for that as well. That is paramount. The training that our children get from now is what they will go with when they're going into their adult life. Sanasha, I know you had your hand up for a while. I'm gonna have you make your intervention, and then I believe that Sergeant Maynard also wanted to say something again as well. So Sanasha.
Let me just lower my hand. So yes, tonight there are a number of things, number of points that as you were going on, sorry to extend the meet so long, but there was one where, as Ron would have mentioned, praying for children. And it is a real thing. Like currently there's a child in my class. His mom would have passed a while ago when he was quite young, like infants or so. And this child is creating havoc around the school. And even like when they have ISCF, as you would have asked about ISCF earlier, and it was asked, I asked him, do you want to go to this ISCF session? He said no. I went to church yesterday. I got Jesus already for the week. I don't need him for the rest of the week. I see him again on Sunday. And he is 8 years old. So that was one. So then a few weeks ago, the same child, he would have left home for school. He was going to be tested that day. And he decided he's not going to come to school. So he went elsewhere. And someone saw him on the street and brought him in. A family member came to the school because they would have someone contacted me from the neighborhood, told me they saw this child in the neighborhood walking around. I contacted his grandmother who he lives with. And so she did as much follow-up as she could. Long story is, he was brought to the school. This boy's question, police came with a family member of his. The boy's question and everything. I go into the classroom and this boy sat in the class, did a test, everything. And then to find out this boy had a bird in his bag. He was questioned, he was interrogated with a bird in his bag. He actually had a bird. He stole someone's bird. I asked him if he got a bird. He gave me a number of stories, but then a lady called the school and informed us that her birds were missing. The boy stole the lady's birds, sat inside the room, was interrogated by the police officers, and all of that time he had a bird in his bike. It's only at lunchtime when they left the classroom to go to the staff room. And I got my turn and told me, teacher, this child had a bird in their bike. And I could not believe it until another teacher verified, yes, the child had a bird in his bike. So that's one of the things. And he gets lots of trouble. And then the question earlier was, why do you send the children to school? Sometimes I honestly, as a teacher, I wonder about that. Because I have children that come to school every day and they come to school with no books. They are in class 2 at the age of 8 years old, and they have no books at all in their bag. They come to school with their phone. Yes, they bring school with their phones. They come to school with their phone, with their wallet or their purse with lots of money in it. They may have their raincoat, etc., but there are no books. And I contact the parents, I will call the parents and contact the parents, and I will say, your child came to school today and he or she had no books. I forget to pat he or she by this morning. That's the response I usually get. I always tell them, your child is old enough that he or she can pack their bag at night. They have been given a timetable. I taught them how to read a timetable. They can pack their bag. They're not babies anymore. So parents, please encourage your children, teach them the responsibility. These are small tasks that they can do. They're old enough to pack their bikes. You don't have to pack their bikes for them. Then another thing that was touched upon was the gambling in schools. And someone mentioned primary schools. I've never seen it in primary school, but I've had a personal experience with it in the secondary school. And that's actually why I left the secondary school and don't think I'll ever return. So I was at a secondary school and I saw a young boy gambling. He was in second form. He really should have been fourth form, but he was still in second form and he was gambling. So I told him, he knows it's wrong. I told him he has to go to the deputy principal. And on my way escorting, the boy pushed me down the stairs. So I luckily caught my balance, held on to the railing, caught my balance. I reported it to the principal, reported to the deputy principal. I even called in the police. And I was planning to press charges, but as Sergeant Mineral said, they usually don't like, I believe, they don't like to charge children. But this boy, I really was pressing charges on him, but the officer, he would come every day, he'll say, Ms. Prophet, you give the boy another chance. Give him another chance. So eventually I did drop the case. I did drop it. I didn't want to go forward with it. But reality is, oftentimes, persons go to work and they don't have to deal with violence. But teachers go to work and they are like referees, having a part fights. We play the role of police officers sometimes. Sometimes I feel like a police officer, to be quite honest. We have to go part of the fight. You have to be a doctor, you have mommy, daddy, you have to be all these things. And I really truly don't mind being majority of these things. But reality is, nobody wants to go to work and wonder, will I make it back home alive? So that's another thing that we have to look at when we look at violence in schools. It's not violence only against other children, but violence towards teachers. And if a teacher happens to have to defend themselves, sometimes they're seen as that teacher is an adult, and look at how they're assaulting this child. But you have to defend yourself. But oftentimes public seem not to see that. It's like, this person's a child, so he or she is supposed to get it with it. And it's not only boys now that are violent, but even the girls now are becoming very violent. And something needs to be done. There needs to be some form of intervention. And there's also, I can say there's a counseling service that's usually also provided by the psychiatric hospital. But for whatever reason, persons seem to think, I don't want my child to go to psychiatric hospital. I don't want nobody to call my child mad. It's not that your child is mad.
Stigmatized.
Yes, they stigmatize it. But they really don't need to be called mad. There are lots of persons out there that have mental issues. And the sooner you intervene, the sooner you find out what is actually happening to that child, the faster you can help that child. So in case if there's anyone out there that does not know, there's a child guidance being offered at the psychiatric hospital for our children is for free. So please feel free if you think your child needs that assistance, you can have that child evaluated. And I think Mr. Sergeant Minner probably has some other information as it pertains to that. So if you can enlighten us, please do so. Thank you. That's it for me for tonight.
Thank you, Sanasha. Sergeant Minner?
I think you've pointed them in the right direction. If anyone needs to see me and needs some help with NHL appointment there, you can always contact me at the station. Ray would be willing to point them to the juvenile liaison scheme. We have a wonderful officer, Sergeant Harris, who would more than assist them in getting their appointments done. I might not be qualified to say what I'm about to say, but I'll say anyway. We are in Barbados, a Christian society, and we have a lot of hypocrites, and I have a few experiences. I'm going to give you my latest one. We know that we as a populace know that we need to pray and we need to point ourselves in the direction of the Master so that he can assist us through our endeavors. And one of my recent experiences, this lady was at the station with her child. And there was an intervention going on. We had about 4 or 5 boys, and her son was really one who was in the hot seat, and she was trying to get him out. So she started to pray there and talk, and then she said, "I just go down on my knees every morning and pray for this child." And if you hear the boy holler and break down laughing, you would left this chat right now. This little boy, if you saw his face, said, "Mommy, you?" And the little boy started laughing. So you got in for that. She never ever did that, but she was out there saying how she did this praying and how she called on the Lord to help her son because she knew he trouble and stuff like that. But she doesn't do it. She doesn't do it. And I believe that if you ask the Lord, and I've asked him many times to help me through all my situations, and he have never failed me. He has never failed me. And I believe that if you ask, you will receive. And that is something that we experience. But we are too hypocritical. We say it and we don't do it. And I've seen it over and over again. Okay? And another thing I want to say, in terms of the institutions, we really need an institution to assist us with these young persons when we see them going in the wrong direction. We have an institution in St. Peter that, for me, I was invited there once to do a presentation, and my presentation lasted like 10 minutes. And I left. I told the lady in charge, I'm not going any further. I'm leaving. Because you take school children from all over Barbados and send them to that institution because they are bad behaved. But for me, you don't have a proper structure there. And all the children there, and they were like 15 or 20 there. And all those children were trying to do is to prove who was the worst in that bunch. So everybody was trained to outdo each other in bad behavior. And I didn't see the structure there to prevent that from happening. So the children just took over when it was there. They just took over that institution and they was trained to prove who was the worst. And since that episode, I've been seeing children coming to the station from that institution for various infractions. You go there and only thing you get is drug tested. So we know when you leave there if you're using drugs or not. But for me, there's no help to you when you leave there. So you go back into the same institution after 2 weeks, you display the same behavior. And you don't think they kick you there twice or 3 times. So for me, we need something more stringent to help those children. Some other military type institution. That's what I'm thinking, to help those children where we can place them and because some children definitely will go to school, and I don't want to say they won't be able to learn anything, but it would be a challenge. There's something called ADHD, and some children will learn different to other children. So then we gotta put things in place to help children. Some will be carpenters, some will be masons. Some you can identify how a child will learn from an early age and put it in place. Don't leave it to go and fall because the drug persons out there are recruiting at a very young age, because the ones they have, the 22 and the 23-year-olds, are being killed. So they've got to come back and replenish all the time. So it's a revolving door for those drug users. So they're bringing them in as early as possible, putting a gun in a fella hand until you're going to be Superman. And they're bringing in at 12 and 13 and 14 and trying to get it inculcated. So we need to reach them early and identify and place them in those institutions so we can help them. Because everybody ain't cut out for secondary school, and everybody ain't cut out to be a doctor or a lawyer. Somebody needs to shovel snow, somebody needs to cut cane. So we need to help those children from early age. That's my little contribution.
Thank you so much for that, Sergeant Maynard. So it brings into perspective what the panelists were saying, accountability on parents, but also there's a social responsibility from those in society. And we need to go back to those days where your neighborhood used to raise your children with you, the grandparents, the aunties, the uncles used to raise your children with you. We need that assistance in grooming these children. We need to also be positive role models for our children as well. Because as much as we have violence and bullying and so on in school, we are seeing it every single day. And I see it every single day in the workplaces. So much so that sometimes you wonder if you're dealing with children, even though it's adults that you're interacting with. So sometimes you can see why the children are behaving the way they do because you're seeing the same behaviors being expressed by some of the parents. So we have a social responsibility. And as Christians, we as the church have our own responsibility, the purpose that God has put us here. And that is a part of it all, teaching our children, teaching our parents, teaching our congregation right from wrong, and being there to hold their hands where they have challenges, where they feel as though they can't do it anymore. So we're coming down to the end. We have one more intervention by Sister Eunice, and then we will be closing. Sister Eunice?
Hi, I'm just gonna read this thing that I saw on the internet. It is, what does family time look like nowadays in the eyes of a child? After dinner, a teacher started checking on the homework done by her students. Her husband is strolling around on a smartphone playing his favorite game. Upon checking the last homework, tears welled up in the wife's eyes. Her husband noticed her weeping and asked, "Why are you crying, my dear? What happened?" "Yesterday, I gave a homework to my first grade student to write something on this topic, my wish," the wife said. "Okay, but why are you crying?" the husband asked without taking off his eyes from his phone. "Reading the last note made me cry." The husband became curious and asked, "What's written in that note that made you cry?" "Listen." The wife tearfully began to read the letter. "My wish is to become a smartphone. My parents love their smartphone very much. They care about the smartphone so much that sometimes they forget to care about me. When my father comes home from work tired, he has time for his smartphone, but not for me. When my parents are doing some important work and the smartphone rings, they will attend to the phone within a single ring, but not me. Even when I am crying, they play games on their smartphones, not with me. When they are talking to someone on their phone, they never listen to me, even if I am telling them something important. So my wish is to become a smartphone." After listening to the note, the husband got emotional and asked his wife, "Who wrote this?" She looked up at him and said, "Our son. Let us not take priority over material things in exchange of our family and relationships. Smartphones are there to make our lives easier and not to roll us over. It is not yet too late to start again." Going back to how family times is supposed to be, back in the old days where there is still no internet and games to keep us fixated on the screens of our phones. Put down the phone for a while. Talk to your children or your spouse or your friends. Talk to the people you love and make them feel loved. And you can receive love from them too. Can your phone give you love? That's it.
Thank you so much for that, Sister Eunice. And that's food for thought. It says a lot. And as you were reading that, it brought me back home to some of the things that I may even do in terms of working. You leave work, you come home, and you're on your phone at work all the time, not realizing how it affects those around you. So imagine a child is asking to be an object because they realize that that is the object that their parents are paying most attention to. So it calls for self-actualization for all of us. So I want to thank each and every one of our panelists this evening for the insightful information that they've given us. Thank you for sharing your experiences and your expertise. I want to express profound gratitude to our audience for the questions that you posed, the queries, and some of the comments that we got coming in. And I would say to you that if you believe that we ought to do a part 2 on this topic, or there's any other social issue that you believe that we ought to address as a church, you can definitely send that information into our church office here at Christ is the Answer Family Church. We are a church of movement and a church of progress, and we believe that there are issues that are affecting our congregation, our children, our brothers and sisters in Christ that we need to address. And so we want to hear from you. We want the feedback from you about the challenges that you are experiencing and the things that you want us to address. And we have our email that you can send information to. That's CITAFC1993@gmail.com. You can contact us, CITAFC1993@gmail.com, and it's placed in the chat if you want to jot it down quickly. Or you can call the Christ is the Answer Family Church at 538-2148, Monday to Friday between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. That's 538-2148. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. Thank you so much for your participation this evening. It was a pleasure being your moderator. I am Shakita Williams Carter, and I had a blast with you. I look forward for many more discussions as such, dealing with the issues in our society. Thank you all and have a blessed night. There may be some announcements. Rohan, you can signal to me if there are any announcements before we officially close. Or John Paul.
You already had announcements. Good night, everyone. And thank you, the panel. Thank you, the audience, for being on tonight. We greatly appreciate the feedback that was shared. The only announcement for the youth, as is something we mentioned, tomorrow at 7:30, there will be the Youth Alive session. So feel free for our parents, if you would like the information, that you could always contact us at the email or via telephone to send the link. And also on Friday, we will be having Next Generation Youth. So as well for that, we will be able to send the link to you guys.
Thank you so much for that, Rohan. And we'll have the closing prayer. I know it is after 7, so I'll just go ahead and close. Father God, we give you all the praise and the thanks for this evening's session. I thank you for all that have been on this Zoom platform this evening. Father, I thank you for the panelists. I thank you for those listening ears, God, that may have had answers to questions that they had. Father, I pray that you will continue to use us. Use this church, use this congregation, use each and every one who was on the panel this evening. God, for them to continue to do the work of you, for them to continue to work with the development of our young people, not only within the Barbadian society, but throughout the region, Lord God, and internationally. I pray, Lord God, that our hands will be used by your kingdom to continue to reach many more beyond our youth generations, Father God, but even within our adults. I pray, Father God, that you will bless those who were not able to join this evening. And I hope, Lord God, that members of our audience will go out and share the information that they've gathered today. I pray, Father, that you will continue to use us as your tools and your vessels. I pray these things, but no other name but your name, oh Heavenly Father. We all say, amen. Thank you all and have a blessed night.
Good night, everyone.